You're listening to an Anderson Entertainment production.
This episode,
we're bringing romance into the workplace in Fab Facts.
There's a new dawn, but just how long will it last in the Randomizer?
and it's Deja UFO with Samira Ahmed.
Oh, that was a good one. That's all coming up in pod 160
of the Gerry Anderson podcast.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's get started. Let's go.
Spectrum is green.
The Gerry Anderson podcast with Jamie Anderson and Richard James.
Hello.
Oh, hello. Hello there.
It's nice to see you again.
Yeah, it's nice to see you.
Yeah, no, not you, the listener.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just standing in the way. You meant those all those people behind me.
Pointing at the Podstrons.
Sorry.
Anyway, it's great to see you / be in your ears. My name is Jamie Lionel Anderson.
And I'm Richard Nicholas James.
And over there is Chris Dale with a K at the end.
I see.
Chris Dale,
yes.
K, Chris Dalek. And today he's sampling a whole load of local honeys. I don't know why.
He is, isn't he?
And when I say that, I mean jars of honey from bees. Just before there's any salacious nonsense going on. That's not what was my intention at all. Anyway, when Chris has finished deciding which of the local honey products is the best one, he'll let us know. And then he'll be doing the randomizer, where he watches a random Gerry Anderson episode as selected by his very clever machine known as the randomizer.
That's right.
Dear Richard, before I get myself or Chris Dale into any more trouble, what else is coming up in this 160th edition of the Gerry Anderson podcast?
Well, for our 160th edition, we're really pushing the boat out with some Gerry Anderson news from all corners of the Gerry Anderson universe.
Oh, even that one.
Or Newsiverse, so I like to call
it. Okay. What else?
We've got the second part of Jamie's interview with celebrity mastermind champion Samira Ahmed.
It's all about masterminds, isn't it?
Yes, talking all things UFO and beyond, I expect, if I know her. We've got Fab Facts coming up in a little while, of course, and we'll be hearing from our lovely Podstrons who've been emailing us at podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk. They've been tweeting us #Gerry Anderson podcast, and they've been posting on our Facebook group as well.
Goodness
all of that
me.
coming up.
Aren't we lucky that you all do that? Now, if you haven't yet joined the Gerry Anderson Codcast, oh dear, the Gerry Anderson podcast Facebook group, then you should go to facebook.com/groups/podsterons and join in the fun and jollities there. It's one of the nicest corners of the internet, full of
it really is.
lovely people doing nice fun things. You will find your tribe right there, and you need not worry if you've only ever seen one episode of It's the Secret Service or everything, including GFI. How did you see that? I don't know how you managed that. It doesn't matter, what range of expertise you have. You'll be welcome there and be made to feel welcome too.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just so nice, isn't it? That
a bit more welcome than you make me feel, to be honest.
Well, I ran out of welcome in pod 59, Richard. So
where's my local honey?
You're married to one. Anyway, without further ado, let's go on to this week's Fab Facts.
Talking of local honey.
Now, time for this week's Fab Facts.
Richard James.
Oh,
it's time for this week's ASMR Fab Fact. Are you getting a bit of a median response there?
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
Yeah, okay.
I hope that's what it is.
What happens here is I have a book of Fab Facts, and I'm going to flick through the book of Fab Facts, and Richard will softly whisper, Fab.
Yeah,
I'll stop flicking, and then I'll read the fact. Are you ready?
I don't like it, though.
Here we go.
Fab.
Oh,
I didn't like that.
You're right, I can't cope with it anymore.
Yeah, that's too weird.
Okay, well... There we are. Now, even though you whispered it so softly, I did still make it through to the late 1950s for this Fab Fact.
Oh.
And a bit beyond. So, this week's Fab Fact, which is no longer in ASMR, concerns the early days of Four Feather Falls, at least to begin with.
Right, okay.
When it came time to find voice artists for the show, Dad was very keen to use an actress he had worked with previously on The Adventures of Twizzle, an actress you and I, Richard, have also worked with, and a great joy it was too.
Ah, yes.
Denise Breyer.
Yes!
And of course, the reason we've worked together with her is because she would later play Zelda in Terrorhawks and brought back Zelda for the 2014, 15 and 16 series with Big Finish.
Yeah.
So, Dad went round to Denise's to try out some character voices, and of course, at Denise's house was her then husband, the late great Nicholas Parsons.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, someone was needed to read in voices for the other characters to give something for Denise to play off. But rather than continue letting Dad read in as the part of Tex Tucker, which you can imagine was... not...
I'd like to hear that.
Not powerfully performed, I would imagine. Anyway,
do the tapes exist anyway?
I don't think so, thankfully, as much as it would have been interesting to hear them.
Yeah.
Of course, Nicholas Parsons leapt in and offered his services, just for the reading in, of course. At the end of the session, Dad said, well, we've found some great voices from Denise, but I think we've also found our Tex Tucker. Obviously meaning Nicholas.
Imagine.
And obviously, he was absolutely right. If you've ever seen Four Feather Falls, Nicholas is superb as Tex Tucker and several other characters, and went on to collaborate with Dad on several other projects over the next few years, including the Blue Cars travel ads and various other bits and pieces. But that also opens up a slightly interactive element of this fab fact.
Oh, right.
In that Denise and Nicholas weren't the only married couple to have worked on an Anderson show. There were quite a few others, obviously, like Dad and Sylvia, or Martin Landau and Barbara Bain.
Yeah.
But also a few other less well-known ones. Now, for instance, UFO casting director Rose Tobias Shaw was married to actor Maxwell Shaw, who appeared in 4 episodes of the show as Dr. Schroeder. Space 1999 Year 2 costume designer Emma Porteous was married to actor Peter Porteous, who played Moonbase Alpha's weapons officer, Petrov, in 3 whole episodes.
Right.
Sometimes you'll find married actors who appeared in the same Anderson show but not in the same episode, such as Julian Glover and Isla Blair, who each appeared in different episodes of Space 1999, as did Brian Blessed and Hildegard Neal.
Right.
Presumably there were other married couples where each partner worked on an Anderson show at one time. So if you know of any other notable examples, please do email us, podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk. And similarly, but also kind of opposite to it at the same time, sometimes people even got married after working on an Anderson show together. For example, there's a rumour that Space Precinct Assistant Editor Charlotte Serple actually ended up marrying a member of the cast.
Oh,
Richard,
really?
could you cast any light on that? Shed any light on that?
Charlotte Serple, that does ring a bell. She worked on Space Precinct, you say?
I believe so, yes.
I have no idea. I wonder who she ended up marrying.
God,
she probably asked herself that a few times herself, yes.
Well, of course.
Nice.
I doubt that your love story is the only one that took place. And of course, as Leo Eaton...
What, on Space Precinct?
Yes.
Really?
Well,
not on,
not on Space Precinct, but other Anderson shows. I mean,
I see.
Leo Eaton mentioned in his interview that he was fired for amorous relations on UFO,
That's right.
for example.
That's true.
Not quite the same. But yes, if you do know of any other examples, Podstron, do email us podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk, and we'd love to hear your answers, thoughts, and analyses of this topic of married Anderson folk.
But that's interesting, Jamie. You mentioned that your dad went to see Denise Breyer, and obviously Nicholas Parsons was there and read in. And at the end of that sort of audition, he said, "Well, I've also found my Tex Tucker."
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember, it'd be a couple of years ago now. You invited me in to read in for Colin Baker in one of your Doctor Who scripts, A Big Finish.
Yes, was that Hour of the Cybermen? No.
Yeah.
Was it that? It was, wasn't it?
Yes. So, I mean, I'm wondering then, am I now going to get the call to play
Colin Baker?
Yeah.
I think Colin Baker might have something to say about that, but... as soon as that's done, possibly. I mean, we'll have to ask Nick Briggs very nicely, won't we?
No, let's not forget I even mentioned it.
Okay.
Yeah.
A bit weird planning Colin's demise at this early stage. Anyway, there you go. If you've got any thoughts or answers, do email us as requested. But for now, I think that brings us to the end of this week's
Marriage Fact. Ah, yes, pretty good. Interesting.
Pretty good.
I think the thing is, if you make such a span of programs over so many years, you're gonna, get a few marriages, probably a few divorces, births, within that sort of time frame, aren't you?
Yeah.
It's gonna happen.
Total sense. So, what are you wondering who the first Anderson child was?
Oh, yeah. I wonder.
Do you know, of course, I've just realised who Chris has forgotten in that list is John and Jean Taylor, who did all the sound design in the early days.
Right.
There's another married couple.
Okay. Yeah.
Not in front of the screen, obviously, but
yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, very good. Now, after that, I really do think it's time to hand over to our Podstrons, who've been emailing us at podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk. For example, Simpsons Clips 24 here says, well, a couple of weeks ago, Jamie, you asked if anyone had ever embarrassed themselves in front of an Anderson actor.
Yes.
Or alumnus. Well, Simpsons Clips 24 says, I will admit that I actually embarrassed myself in front of Jamie at Fab Worlds in Leicester back in 2019 when I accidentally called him whoever. It was unintentional, mind, and for a while I never lived it down. Thankfully, I've gotten over it. And that's from Simpsons Clips 24. I mean, have you got over it, Jamie?
You may well have gotten over it, but...
Yeah.
No, I mean, that's fair enough. That's what everybody calls me, to be fair.
Yeah, whoever. Now, of course, we have some more entries for our 6 Degrees of Anderson, which Jamie gave us a couple of weeks ago, which was a 2-penny piece to the monster from Dragon's Domain in 6 steps. Right, so we have Dean Harrison here, who says, the 2-penny piece is also known as a tuppence. Tuppence Middleton appeared in Sense8 with Sylvester McCoy. Sylvester McCoy also played the Doctor in Doctor Who. Sylvester also starred alongside Peter Davison in Big Finch's inaugural Doctor Who audio drama, The Sirens of Time. Peter Davison also starred in All Creatures Great and Small, which had many episodes written by Johnny Byrne. Johnny Byrne used to walk his lurcher dogs in the black lot where props from Dragon's Domain were dumped, and his male dog would regularly spray the old monster to mark his territory. I don't know if that's based in anything even remotely resembling fact.
I think we should accept it nonetheless.
Yeah, well, Dean says, if it doesn't make the 6 Degrees segment, that last point will make a good fab fact. Cheers. Yeah, certainly would. Not a bad one. Simon Allen says, the 2p entered circulation in 1971 and was originally made of bronze. Doc Savage was the man of bronze. Marvel legend Stan Lee credited Doc Savage as being the forerunner to modern superheroes. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Martin Freeman has a role. Martin Freeman used to live not far away from Shane Rimmer, who appeared in an episode of Return of the Saint starring Ian Ogilvy. Ian Ogilvy was the film Waterloo, which also featured a role by Gianni Garco, who ended up facing the Dragon's Domain monster.
That was pretty good.
Crikey. I mean, some of these are quite circuitous, aren't
It felt
they?
like more than 6 somehow, but I'm sure I'll take it as being 6.
Just it. Yeah. Do you want a couple more?
Yeah, why not?
Paul Hyder, 2 peas in a pod refers to identical twins. Siamese twins are named after the country of Thailand. Thailand is located on the East Asian tectonic plate. The most famous Asian plates are Chinese Ming Dynasty tableware. Chinese tableware is an example of Mandarin goods. Mandarin goods is an anagram of Dragon's Domain.
That definitely deserves a pat on the back for crazy step there.
Absolutely. Yeah, too right. And finally, this one is from Martin Laybourne. Hello, chaps. Straight down to business with 6 Degrees of Anderson. 2p coin to the monster in Space 1999's Dragon's Domain. Number 1. The 2p coin is sometimes known as tuppence, especially to us older podstrons. Tuppence and her husband Tommy Beresford were characters from the 1980s TV dramas Partners in Crime, adapted from the novels of Agatha Christie. Agatha Christie's 1978 film adaptation of Death on the Nile starred, amongst others, English actor David Niven. David Niven appeared with Gregory Peck and Roger Moore in the 1980 World War II film The Seawolves. The Seawolves also starred the actress who played the White Witch in BBC's 1988 The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe miniseries, Barbara Kellerman. Barbara Kellerman played Dr. Monique Boucher, who was consumed and regurgitated by the monster in Space 1999's episode Dragon's Domain.
Excellent. I'm quite glad that it's got a couple of different actors who faced the dragon.
Yes, that's very good, isn't it?
Yeah, it is great.
Yeah. Well done, everyone. That's a very popular segment. You'll be very pleased to hear, Jamie. But it does mean that we need another one.
Yes.
So?
Well, I'm thinking this week we need to go from a dry wipe whiteboard marker
to
the private detective Dick Spanner.
Right. Okay.
So good luck making your way from the dry wipe whiteboard marker to Dick Spanner this week in precisely
in
6 steps.
No fewer and no more.
Exactly. If you do fewer or more, then your answer will be rejected and possibly mocked.
Yes. Oh, well, certainly. Yeah, send them in, podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk, and I'll read them out in a couple of weeks' time.
Brilliant. I cannot wait. But while we do wait, would you like some Gerry Anderson news?
Oh, is there some Gerry Anderson news?
It's coming whether you like it or not right now.
Oh, I'd love to hear it.
It is this week's Gerry Anderson news.
News. Yeah, we know that. We all know that now.
Just for clarity.
No, but we know.
All right. Well, I've got a treat for you right in the middle of it, one which you will definitely appreciate, Richard. But first of all, many of you have been waiting very patiently for your Space 1999 uniform replica T-shirts.
Yes.
And finally, they are in the warehouse being processed and will be making their way to you very, very, very shortly. There's a lot of them to go through and just to be arranged and do the size splits and that kind of thing. But I do hope that anyone who's pre-ordered in the UK, you should be getting yours between the 7th and the 9th of July. So very, very soon. And if you are outside the UK, it'll be a little bit longer. Sorry about that. But they will be sent on the best possible service to get out to you. So that's exciting.
Now, Jamie, can I ask, you were talking about pre-orders there. Are people still able to order the Space 1999 tops now from the Gerry Anderson?
Yes, they are.
And how long will that take? Or are things slightly quicker now than they were for the pre-orders?
Well, they'll be very quick because it'll be in stock. So
I gotcha.
So if you order one now, you'll get it in the next few days if you're in the UK, and a bit longer if you're outside the UK. Anyway, we are looking at doing a couple of other variants of it. And if you want to see a preview of them and you pre-ordered them, then in your inbox, in the last few days, you should have had an email from me with a video of me showing you the prototypes. So you can see the colour and the cut and the fit and how the sleeves are sewed on and all that sort of stuff. They're very cool.
But you're not wearing it, are you?
No, because the prototypes I got were medium.
And of course, you are a rather more svelte, extra small.
I'm a large. Thank you very much. Thanks for that. Anyway, so they will be heading out to you very soon. All right, thank you very much. Now, moving on to me being nice to you, coming very soon at the end of this month is the 5 Star 5 hardback and audiobook release. Adapted from the original unmade film script by Dad and Tony Barwick and novelised by the one and only Richard James.
It's true.
Yes. Now, if you haven't yet heard the second sample we've released, then, well, you've got some good news coming your way because we're about to play it in.
Oh, good.
But it's read by Robbie Stevens, sound design and music by Benji Clifford. So here is a little 5-minute sample of something rather exciting happening in 5 Star 5.
Lovell turned to Clarence with a sigh. What do you think? Clarence rested on his knuckles.
I can't say I'm impressed.
But Clarence could tell Lovell wasn't listening. He was walking round the robot, oblivious to his caution. This thing can walk through a steel door. See that casing? It's damn near indestructible. He whistled admiringly. Running his fingers idly over a small control unit beside the platform, he looked up at the column of light that rose from the floor. Electro-force field, he muttered to himself. Before Clarence could stop him, he had reached towards the control panel and pressed a large red button.
Typical,
thought Clarence.
He just can't help himself.
Suddenly, as if released from captivity, the R-42 let out an almighty roar. Lovell stumbled back as the hulk before him stretched itself up to its full height. Clarence watched as a light appeared in the robot's eyes. Worryingly, he could hear the sound of servos and gears engaging as if it were preparing to move. Lovell had fallen to the floor in surprise. Clarence? He simpered. I don't think I should have pressed that button. Clarence was backing away into an alcove as the robot powered up.
Do you think?
He replied with a sneer. Raising his hairy hands, he peeked through his fingers in fear. With a discordant mechanical roar, The robot jumped forward and off its display platform, crashing into a pile of mechanical parts on the floor. With a hum of motors, its huge head turned to stare menacingly at Clarence and Lovell.
Don't suppose that thing has an off switch?
Pleaded Clarence, his back to the wall. Lovell sprang back to the control panel in search of a power switch. "What if I make it worse?" he shouted above the din. The robot swung a heavy mechanical arm at a shelf of cables, sending it sprawling the length of the workshop.
How could it possibly be any worse?
Clarence bellowed in fear. As the robot looked around for its next target, a loudspeaker in the ceiling above crackled into life.
"Mr. Lovell?"
came McHine's voice. Clarence could tell he was smiling.
"Your credit has been cleared. You've rendered yourself a robot."
The speaker snapped off as the robot lumbered forward. The ground seemed to shake with every step. As Lovell skirted the wall to join Clarence in his alcove, the R-42 lifted its arm again. With a mighty effort, it sent a pile of scrap crashing into a deactivated droid across the room. Noticing the robot focusing its attention on Lovell, Clarence began to back slowly away from his companion.
I think it's you he wants.
Lovell turned to reply, only to see that Clarence was now some distance away. He had left Lovell completely exposed. "Thanks," he hissed bitterly. "Partner." Holding up his hands, Lovell attempted to calm the mechanical beast. "Take it easy," he soothed. "Easy." In response, the robot took another juddering step forward, bearing down on Lovell from his great height. "Do something!" Lovell screamed in panic. Clarence looked about him for inspiration.
I'll go get help,
he shouted at last, scurrying through the dock doors on his knuckles. Menacingly, the robot raised an arm. Lovell had already seen the damage the R-42 could do with that arm. He trembled in fear in the alcove, convinced every breath he took would be his last. Just as the robot prepared to smash its arm down, Lovell saw his chance. Curling himself up into a ball, he rolled straight between the robot's legs as it brought its weight to bear on a set of shelves near where Lovell had been cowering. Scrambling to his feet, Lovell skidded across the floor and flung himself through the bay door, punching at its controls as he slid through. The shutter slammed shut behind him, and Lovell breathed a sigh of relief. Looking around for Clarence, he wiped the beads of sweat from his face with the back of his hand. A sudden wrenching sound from behind him made him jump out of his skin. Lovell whirled round just in time to see the huge robot wrenching the door from its mountings. Tossing the sheet metal aside as if it were nothing more than a piece of paper, it stepped through the gaping hole in the wall with a mechanical roar. "You know, it's rude to come in without knocking," Lovell sneered. Seeing the robot squaring up to him again, the captain did what he always did in a tight spot. He turned and ran.
Ooh.
Nice. Yeah, it's a good bit, isn't it?
It is a good bit. So,
I'll tell you,
go on, tell us something.
Well,
what are you going to tell
us? The good thing is, it gets better. If you thought that was good, it gets even better.
Does it?
It's true. Yeah, what we heard there was John Lovell meeting one of his team. 5 Star 5 essentially refers to the team of 5 who are recruited by Colonel Zana to fight against the Zargons. And there we meet, for the first time, Rudy, I think the R-42,
yes.
Robot, a rather large, marauding machine who comes in very useful later on in the story.
Ooh, he does. In fact, I've just been listening to another bit where he comes in particularly useful.
Yes.
So,
yes.
No, it's great.
I think he's one of my favourite characters, Rudy. I think you'll like him a lot.
Ah.
Yeah.
What about Clarence?
Well, Clarence is fun, yeah, but Rudy goes the extra mile. I can't say too much, but...
Yeah, don't ruin it.
No.
Okay. Anyway, look, that's coming very soon. More samples in due course, and we may even have a full chapter in the next couple of weeks on the podcast for you to enjoy. So there you go. More soon. Moving away from books and audio to prints, lots of you have been enjoying our partnership over the last couple of years with Andrew Skilleter. Andrew is doing a brand new range of prints, numbered and signed by him. They will be launching over the next few weeks, and you can grab one of those and enjoy them, but they'll be in limited editions of 100 of each. So There you go. There's a bit of scarcity going on there. Exciting.
Yes.
And finally, for now anyway, 10th of July, Richard, it's a very important day, isn't it? Because I believe that is the day that you're going on holiday.
Yes, with my new Space 1999 top.
Yeah, perfect.
Yep.
But most importantly of all, for everyone else except for you and Charlotte, it's Captain Scarlet Day.
It is,
First ever Captain Scarlet Day. Now, we're not going too crazy with this. You know, we just want some nice stuff going on. Chris Dale's making a nice video that you can enjoy. We might even put another free episode of New Captain Scarlet on the YouTube channel. How about that? We'll be celebrating both Scarlets, old and new. If you're going to do something interesting for Captain Scarlet Day, what will it be? Do let us know. We'd love to hear from you. podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk. Oh, nice. I've almost forgot.
What now?
Well, that's the end of the Gerry Anderson news, but I forgot to say it, so that's the end of the Gerry Anderson news.
I see. That was the news. He forgot the end of the news.
I did. Oh dear.
You did,
I read to the end of it, and then I thought, there's a big white space there. I better wait for a minute.
That'll be the end. Yeah,
but that was
right.
the end of it. So.
Yeah, the end of it. Yeah. Now, over on Facebook, people have been joining in their droves our Facebook Gerry Anderson podcast official listeners group at facebook.com/groups/Podstrons, and they've been posting. For example, James Johnson says something that occurred to me recently is that Thunderbirds never had a dream episode. Whilst I can't speak for Fireball XL5 or anything prior, that does make it stand out from the Supermarination entries either side of it. That is, I think, mostly a relief, but it has led me to wonder what a Thunderbirds dream episode would look like. An actual episode, not a brief interlude of Alan's had too much cheese before bed, he says. Would it be more whimsical than Stingrays, or a sort of worst-case scenario one like Captain Scarlet's? What are your thoughts?
I think it would be a Scarlet-esque nightmare, attack on Tracy Island kind of nightmare episode.
Now, I don't know, and this is quite an admission, every single episode of Thunderbirds. So, was Tracy Island ever under attack? Was it ever besieged?
I don't think so. The nearest you got was Terror New York City, with Thunderbird 2 being shot down not far away and crashing onto the island. But I don't believe it was attacked. That only happens in New Thunderbirds, I think.
Yes, okay. Johan Huth says, I've just been to my first convention in 12 years. Imagine that. Taking my kids along for the first time, and I must say that it was so uplifting for the soul. My daughter Lizzie and my son Yuri both enjoyed their first taste of the convention scene here at Supernova Sydney, and are looking forward to going again next year, even in cosplay. Then it occurred to me that there is one cosplay that I could really pull off, and I've been dying to do something for years. A Moonbase Alpha senior staff member. Question is, what are some good tips to going about with this one? Well, I mean, get yourself a top for a start. Surely.
Get yourself a cosplay top from the Gerry Anderson
That's right.
obviously.
Job done. Yeah.
Get a slightly ill-fitting vinyl belt, which
that's right.
Should not be very sympathetic to the waistline.
That's right.
Make sure you've got slightly heely shoes. Flares, obviously, a must.
Flares, 70s facial hair.
If at all possible. If
at all possible.
Yeah. I mean, even Catherine Shell was trying that one on.
Yes.
But if you can do a sort of Prentice Hancock level moustache, I think that would definitely help sell the whole look. There you go. There are
a few tips for you there.
Tips from the
Scott
pros.
Bickley says, indeed. Scott says, I really enjoyed the live stream earlier, voicing Scott Tracy Parker, and also I did the voice of Captain Hanson too. Well done, James Pilson-Wood, for organising those. Yes, we spoke about those last time over on the Facebook group. He says, thank you, James, for a great job on the live stream. And as a treat, he's posted a selfie of himself with his Scott Tracy figure after the thing was finished. Very nice, Scott. That's lovely. Martin Smith says, I've ordered the 60th anniversary Blu-ray box set of Supercar as a 60th birthday present for myself and paid 60 quid. Cheers, everyone.
Interesting.
All the 60s. Yeah, nice. Let us know if you enjoyed it, Martin.
Well,
Tom Hodden.
You'll have to wait until August to know that, won't you?
Right, yes. Well,
it's
all right, I'll soon be here. Tom Hodden posted, and now the news from the Anderson-verse, and he suggested Mistron infiltrators discovered after politician acts with suspicious competence. Martin Robinson posted, MPs demand public inquiry into why Harrington Studios was still open and working during the pandemic. And, of course, Simon Allen posted, review of a book about one man's decline from actor at a Midlands motel to having to steal to make ends meet. That's Crossroads to Crime.
Nice.
Midlands Hotel.
I see what he did there.
Yeah, you're too young for Crossroads, aren't you?
I remember bits of, but only from sort of clip shows and stuff.
Yeah. I did a day on the new Crossroads in about 1998, I think.
Did you?
Yeah, I did, yeah. Funnily enough, when Charlotte was a young girl, her dad appeared on the original Crossroads. And when my daughter was a young girl, I appeared on the rebooted Crossroads. Isn't that sweet?
That is.
What goes around comes around.
What strange sort of semi-symmetry there.
Semi-symmetry.
You know what I mean? It's not quite symmetrical. Is it symmetrical? Anyway, there we are. Thanks for that.
Yeah. Anyway, that's all from our Facebook group, but do, as Jamie said, pop along and join in the fun. Post your comments there, and if you're lucky, I might read them out next time.
Or even if you're unlucky, potentially.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, well, Richard James, unless you have any further Podstron contributions for this
Not
moment.
for now. More coming up later.
Shall we head towards featured interview part 2?
Oh, well, I should think so, yes.
Good. Well, as you know from last week, Samira Ahmed is a huge Anderson fan. We already knew she was a massive Space 1999 fan, but now we know for sure that she's also a colossal UFO fan. And she came forward with all sorts of exciting observations and thoughts, and I just loved having a chat with her. More incisive, witty, incredibly smart remarks coming your way from Samira, and I will also be present in this second part of my interview with Samira Ahmed. Just talking of Aisha's bottom, and seeing as you've mentioned,
those costumes.
The there's some fascinating costume choices in there, and we definitely will. Well, this sort of relates because when we talked about Space 1999 on Breakaway Day 2 years ago,
2019.
Goodness me. We were talking about the kind of diversity and the roles for women and all those positive aspects. It's only, 3 years in terms of production apart from UFO. And yet, to me, that it feels like a huge leap on. You said that you can see, like you said, there's a leap of being hip and groovy and a bit of sort of sexual liberation in UFO, and it matures really quickly. What do you think about the sort of the gender roles and diversity on UFO as a kind of stepping stone to Space 1999? Did they get it right?
Well, I think, what's sweet is you can see it's a product of its time. So there are women in leadership roles everywhere. It's just that, like Gabrielle Drake, she's wearing, I like the first episode where she clocks off and she takes off her weird sort of gladiatorial style sort of bikini thing. And then she puts on a wraparound miniskirt, and that's her changing into her civvy. And I just found that baffling, because it just made no sense. But it's sort of sweet, and it still did that thing which Gerry Anderson was so good at, which is a child watching this would have this sense of the grown-ups are like this. This is what it's like when you're a grown-up in space.
Yeah.
So it's a child's eye view of being a grown-up, even if much of the drama actually is more genuinely adult-centered. I often think they were let down by the fabrics, because the idea of the skin tight all-in-one, we've seen other shows do. I mean, some of the later Star Treks, like Discovery and stuff, they have worn, actually even Next Generation, they wore those all-in-one bodysuits.
Yeah.
And they were unflattering. I know I talked to Marina Sirtis about just, what a nightmare they were for women. But actually, the fabrics was, I think they had Lycra then properly, and it just, everything tended to look smoother. They probably had control garments underneath that helped. Whereas there's something about what it just looked like, not even linen, but it was like kind of this really thick material that used to make sports clothing out of in the 60s. So it's a bit saggy. It doesn't, it's not flattering. And then it's beige, which really is the most unflattering color. And although, I mean, you can tell a lot of these women they're obviously incredibly fit and they're model looking. I mean, Shakira, Michael Caine's wife, was one of the Nish Hempel.
Nish Hempel, yeah.
And you can tell that the professional models sort of just about carry it off, but it's not a great look. And the men don't look great either. I mean, everyone looks a bit. Well, actually, to be fair, it's partly because now we're so used to super sculpted bodies, and I worry about that too. I don't think it's a good thing that men are all working themselves into 6 hours a day in the gym to get those little lines of abs. So I quite like the fact that everyone just looks a little bit baggy. Baggy,
portly, or just ill-fitting to some degree.
Yeah, it was big boned. They're also a bit big boned. And the other hair is, I'm fascinated by how bad the hair is on most of the men.
Interesting. Who is the worst culprit for hair?
Well, I do think George Sewell, who plays Alec,
Yeah.
I mean, I can't get over his 50s Eddie Cochran hair wig thing. I don't understand it. And I have this real issue with, I don't know, Colonel Foster's hair changed so much over the course of the episode. So the first episode, you could tell he's got receding hairline, long sideburns, but they've given him a bit of a wig. And then it turned into a kind of full-on sort of action man sort of wig by the sort of later episodes. And he looks good. The thing about Michael Billington.
Yeah.
The thing about Michael Billington is he has a really handsome face and these beautiful eyes. And once he got the wig right, actually, you could be convinced by it. But because you've seen all the other episodes, you just keep thinking they've given him a fake hair. And of course, we know that, you can be very sexy and bald or whatever. Sometimes it's just about embracing it. So, Jamie, and, Patrick Stewart, all these things. So I don't know, part of it is it's just a really trivial observation about how the thing about wigs and that kind of very, very late 60s fashion was it was pretty unforgiving if you weren't a pretty androgynous build, with a big mop of hair. Like if you look at pictures of the Beatles around 67, 68, and they're wearing these amazing bright green and bright pink suits with huge ruffles, all of them. But they're all skinny guys with big mops of hair and occasionally beards, and they just look fantastic. But when you see older men doing it, and the comparison I'd make is Leslie Phillips in that weird show Casanova 73, which famously got lots of complaints for being really inappropriate, even in the 70s. He was sort of having an affair with his friend's teenage daughter, and it got shifted from an early evening slot and eventually got cancelled. But the way he dresses and his character, Doctor in Clover, there's a 1970 doctor in the house film called Doctor in Clover with Leslie Phillips, who tries to become hip and groovy. And John Fraser, his nephew, or his cousin, takes him down to Carnaby Street, and they get him a wig, and they get him a big frilly shirt, and they get him a big patterned Nehru jacket. And essentially, that is Colonel Foster's journey, isn't it? Although I love the suits. I love the Nehru jackets. I love the purple one that he wears and the dark blue one that Commander Straker wears. So in a weird way, while I'm making fun of it, I really loved the suitings. I loved the look. I loved that it dared to be really flamboyant in space.
Flamboyant in space. That is a great little sort of subtitle for the series. Yeah. So it's interesting because a lot of people will cite the fashions of UFO as being, really cool. But there's obviously some kind of oddities or failings. I mean, we haven't even mentioned the string vests of the skydiver crew.
They had really, I did actually really check them out in those episodes, and they had really good beige sort of camisoles underneath that the women wore. Yeah. So you think, oh my God, this is really inappropriate, but it's not at all. No. It's more on the men because you notice the tufts of chest hair. But the women actually look really dignified, and they look great in those string vests because they say they've got a built-in beige under thing. Yeah,
a little slip. It's a great texture. They're very cool. But I mean, do you think these sort of analyses of the failings of fabric and the oddities of wraparound miniskirts, is that a symptom of going from Supermarionation to live action? Because on the Supermarionation shows, especially if you look at, Lady Penelope, a lot of the female characters, the Angels and Captain Scarlet, even the Spectrum tunics, they've got those fashions on point, pretty much all the way through. You couldn't have these same criticisms of Supermarionation, yet this is later in the journey. Is that a symptom of moving to live action and scaling up? And
I think it is. I mean, it's something they say about fashion, don't they? The reason that fashion models are really skinny and androgynous is because they're just great coat hangers for fabric. You put it on a normal body and it never looks as good. So some of it is just that. I do think there is a sense of, Sylvia Anderson's eye for, dressing up is the big part of it. So the colours and the wigs. I think it's a great combination with, and although, I'm obviously sorry that it must have been a difficult time for them both, I do think they brought different things to their partnership, and it shows in this it's like an explosion, isn't it, on screen of colour and military sort of ranks. It's sort of like a fever dream of an army colonel. This would be a sort of 60s dream version of the RAF or the Royal Navy, and I really see the parallels with Stingray in particular. Yeah, partly the way that they use Skydiver, partly the way that they use underwater footage, but even just the way that the crew are and some of the dynamics, I think. There's a lot of Troy Tempest type personae in the different commanders. Yeah, and I was going to say it's Straker's a Commander Shaw crossed with Troy Tempest, maybe, to some degree. But you mentioned the sort of fashions and what they both brought. I'm wondering too, as there's so much, as far as I can tell, so much of Dad in Straker,
a lot of the time in sort of discussions and stuff, Sylvia is often credited with bringing sort of more characterization to especially the puppet series.
Yeah.
But it feels like for this, it's like maybe the balance has tipped slightly, and Sylvia is more influencing the visuals.
I think you're right.
And Dad influencing the characterization, because it's such a step on. I wonder if that is a function of moving to live action and it then wanting to make it more grown up, or whether that naturally led to this slightly odd style and tone, which wasn't a kid's show anymore, and how personal that was.
I mean, in a way, it feels like the most genuinely groundbreaking of their live action shows, because you could argue, well, Space 1999 is magnificent. Star Trek had been there before. Whereas with this, as you've just, I think, sort of hinted at really well, it sort of is still a kids show, and yet it's not. It has all the joy of the kids show with the costumes. I mean, the model work we haven't talked about yet, but you could, every time there's an explosion coming, it's going to be the best moment of the episode. That one where there's those flying fish missiles that they're firing from underwater, and they blow up a ship. It takes so many missiles, and it takes so much exploding before that ship sinks, and it really is so full of joy, the little flames and on the water. And I think, is it Derek Medding's?
It's Derek Medding's sort of last hurrah with Dad, really, because then he went off onto the Bond shows, and Brian Johnson took over the effects for 1999, having returned from 2001.
Right, yes, of course. So you kind of got a bit of a revolving door. But it's just, I think that's the other thing that the military people probably love about it, but it does really good explosions.
Oh, yeah. The explosions are awesome. If you took the model work from, say, Captain Scarlet or even Thunderbirds and put it as inserts inside in UFO, would it still hang together, or do you? I don't know the answer, but I feel like Derek took things on another level of detail. I mean, those woodland scenes of the shadow mobiles and stuff, it's sort of tweaked and elevated to fit the live action side.
I agree, and there's stuff with the cars as well. When there's cars being chased by that truck. But also, just not being afraid to keep things simple, but bringing them back repeatedly. So the sound and the visuals of the UFOs. Oh, yeah. And I was reading an article about the instruments they used to make it.
Barry Gray's, I mean, instruments as sound effects. It's something that Richard Harvey would do later on Terrorhawks, but that was a very cool element. I mean, Barry pushing the boundaries with electronic music, which he'd been doing since the mid-60s anyway, the early 60s.
The themes of this are probably the greatest ones. So the opening one, it's so full-on disco. Like, I thought, if I were getting married, I would want to walk down the aisle to the opening sound of UFO. Don't you think? Hopefully not wearing a beige bodysuit, but...
Certainly better than the closing, I think.
Oh, but you say that. The closing works because it's completely different, and it's really eerie, and it is the sense of you are under surveillance. This is why I keep coming back to the sense of it as existential horror, which also sets up for Space 1999, which dealt with some of that more. Sorry, I'm pulling bits of tissue out of a pocket that obviously went through the washing machine and throwing it over myself like confetti.
Confetti check, okay, yeah.
I was just going to say.
Sorry.
But I think that the end episode, the end titles just remind you of this concept of the series, which at the height of the Cold War was, you are being watched. It is never ending. They're going to keep coming back. And, Commander Straker and Shadow are they're like the French resistance. They're trying to hold the fort. They're trying to keep going in the face of what may get worse. But as I say, it's an incredibly humanist point of view. I just think Albert Camus would have loved UFO.
You made
have written an episode.
The first person to say that, but it is, when you say it like that, kind of tremendously bleak. But the Dad credits the sort of the idea of the aliens and the threat with transplant surgery becoming a thing in the mid-late 60s, and people's concerns and fears around that and what that meant for you as the recipient of an organ, and that being the driver of that element. But it's such a tiny part, though. But it is important.
Yes and no. So there's two really interesting things. So it's interesting to know that, because the most chilling episode, in a way, one of them is episode 1, where, it begins with that moment of violence, and his sister's been abducted, and it turns out they found her organ, haven't they, in in an alien's body. So there's that whole body snatching horror. If you think about a film like Coma, which came out in 1973, Michael Crichton, have you seen it?
I haven't.
Genevieve Bujold and Michael Douglas. It's a terrific film, and it's a bit of a spoiler if I give too much, but it's about the anxiety over organs. And as we know now, I mean, a film like Dirty Pretty Things with Chiwetel Ejiofor was all about migrants selling their organs, in desperation, to traffickers and all the rest of it. So I think there's something fundamental that your father tapped into, which perhaps those of us who are younger, we've grown up with transplants as a great positive and not have fear. But there's also that sense of what happens to your soul. And I don't know how religious your father was, but there are several episodes, and again, they're the most chilling, where, the one where the pilot comes back from the dead.
Yeah.
But it takes you a while to realize for sure. And then there's that climactic moment when they were doing the spacewalk, and he turns and he looks into his eyes and he knows he's dead. That his mind is dead and his body is somehow animated. And I think that sense of, the soul could be killed, but the body might function, which is also a sort of, at a certain level, it's an awareness of how we're being dehumanized by modern living, aren't we?
Oh, deep analysis. I mean, he wasn't religious, I should add. I mean, he was brought up in a Jewish household and experienced terrible anti-Semitism during the war, on either side of that. And that drove him to sort of leave religion behind, but basically his thought was, well, this, how can something be, given to you and yet be such a source of cruelty? And so he stepped away, but he never described himself as atheist. He was always very much a sort of agnostic.
Yeah, I think
something else
humanist
going on.
is the positive way of seeing it. And also, I remember talking to a rabbi who said, you don't actually have to believe in God to be Jewish. It's not just because it's an ethnicity. But if you actually look at, Jewish spiritual ideas, and it's interesting that the creator of The Twilight Zone, who wrote these very moral stories, and he was of Jewish heritage, didn't believe in God, I don't think. But this idea of justice, of doing the right thing, and there's this big concept in Jewish philosophy of, there is a kind of natural justice, and Straker in a way represents it, that you have to strive to do the right thing because there is no alternative in the face of a godless universe other than evil, and that ultimately there is a sense in which justice will be done.
And I think that is an amazing motivator, which must have been built into Dad from his mum and dad bringing him up that way, because it's again
after the war, after what
absolutely,
after the Holocaust.
Yeah, it's reflected across all the shows. It is this thing of doing the right thing, making sure justice is done, and
there's no sense of hell in Judaism. People forget that. There's Sheol, which is the land of the dead. I remember I went to Catholic school. We did a lot of scripture, but essentially, it's about the idea of you need to live a good life, and that's why I don't think UFO is bleak. I think ultimately it's uplifting, and I didn't even mention Colonel Lake. You mentioned earlier about characters and the role of women.
Yeah,
I mean,
lovely
and
Wanda
of course
Bentham.
it was Ed Bishop who recommended her to take over in that role. And it's such a lovely understated part where there's no big deal made of the fact that she's a woman, although I think she has to fight off an attempted rape by that guy who comes back from the dead, doesn't she? Not quite rape, but there's he's come back from the mission, and he's seen her with Colonel Foster, and he sort of wants her back and assaults her. And I think the way the series deals with sexual harassment and violence is quite revealing and of its way, because the long sleep, the most tragic element of it for me is that the reason Tessa White's character dies is because she was running away she was hitchhiking. The guy who picked her up was trying to rape her, and she's running away from him, and that's why she runs into the road. And when she tells all this to Carmen Strick, I don't see anyone saying, "Oh, we better find this rapist who's out there preying on women on the road." It was like it didn't occur to anyone to look into that.
Yeah, I wonder. I've got my little fact book here. I wonder if that was something that was in there, but it was cut, because there are so many bits and pieces that were written as extras.
Time. And some of the best episodes like that, there's a lot going on. I mean, I think the long sleep, Time Lash, and the Cat with 10 Lives, such a great episode.
Yeah,
but they run right up to the last second, and there's no post resolution having a drink and a cigar in Straker's office in those episodes.
There's a lot packed into them. It is a lot faster moving than a lot of the Supermarionation shows.
Those later episodes I think some of the early ones is a bit too much sitting around in the office. And also, the one about his marriage, Confetti A-OK.
Yeah.
I just thought, seriously, I know your work is keeping you away from home, but you're having a row about the fuse in the back of that machine, and Colonel Foster and you and Alec are actually dealing with snagging on the refit of this office? Don't you have contractors to do this?
It's more of your thing about them focusing on actually delegating and doing the job at hand rather than trying to micromanage every element.
You have core of electrical engineers and things. That's what they're there for. You bring them in to fit out Shadow properly, and then you wipe all their memories with your magic Men in Black thing.
Yeah, there you go. Because that.
The other thing I should just mention before I forget is because we've talked about it in the past, the beautiful, completely unbig deal diversity of the casting in this show is just a joy. And I'm sure that's another of the reasons why, even though I never watched it as a kid, I have this sense of how it looked like London. And I said this about Space 1999, it was like London in space.
Yeah.
And this is that sense too. And I was reading the biographies of a lot of these actors. Many of whom had military service in their backgrounds or had quite humble backgrounds, in the Caribbean. Is it Dolores
Mantes, yeah.
Who has Jamaican Irish heritage?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and it's almost like something out of a 19th century novel. If you actually look at the life stories of all these actors, the same with Michael Billington, very humble background, how he got into acting. So they're not all kind of posh RADA graduates. They're genuinely representing ordinary backgrounds, which even now acting is struggling to give opportunities to. And then the racial diversity and the fact that, your dad and Silver had this eye for interesting looking performers. I know sometimes, like, who's the guy who was the ballet dancer who was the skydiver pilot?
Peter Gordino, was it?
Peter Gordino, I think, who I know there's issues about whether his acting was that great, but I love that he was a bit like a puppet in a nice way.
In a nice way, she says.
Being steel-jawed and sort of inscrutable, because the thing about the puppets was, as much as you like them, and I must say, I thought they were very handsome, some of the Thunderbirds, obviously because they're puppets, there's something that you can't quite work out, like what do they really think, what kind of characters do they really have? And I felt that sometimes people like Peter Gordino sort of had that in a fun way, because you looked at them and you thought, one, you're amazing looking, you look so handsome, but I can't work you out. There's almost something unworldly about them. And then the other guy who was in The Italian Job, who was the Shadow, what do you call those, mobile drivers, who again left after a few episodes. But
gosh, I can't think.
But the one, he was driving the truck and laughing at the end of The Italian Job. But just seeing them as a strong presence in the show, and Dolores Mantis is so beautiful, and a lot of the other women as well, like Aisha. So I just loved it. It was not made a big deal of, but they were there. I even noticed there's an episode where there are detectives who come into the office where, I don't know, someone's been possessed and is going to go off and kill someone. And one of the three detectives just happens to be black and has a Caribbean accent. And I think it's hearing the accents as much as seeing the visual diversity, which just made UFO feel like a show that was genuinely in the future. Yeah.
Yeah, it is amazing, actually, just how diverse it is when you sort of think back to the time. And I'm sure, I'm not taking any credit away from Sylvia in terms of the casting, but I'm sure that the anti-Semitism that Dad experienced, he was very much of a belief that nobody should be treated differently because of their heritage, essentially. And it sounds a bit on the nose to say it like that now, but it's true. It's kind of built into him because of what he experienced as a child. So I think you start to see that really early on from
which is what the only thing that I found odd is, is it the second episode, The Computer Affair, where they, which is one of those, I mean, there are some of the episodes, I watched them in the recommended order, not the production order.
Oh, okay.
No, I followed, also they come on the box set that way, on the latest DVD box set. And episode 2 then is The Computer Affair, which is very much office-based, and it's a bit like a thing about diversity, where they think that because, you've got to find his name, but the black commander and Gabrielle Drake's character are obviously have a thing for each other, and they're worried that that's interfering with sort of impersonal, proper operations, and that she ends up deliberately putting him in jeopardy to try and prove that she's not motivated by her affection. And so you have a thing like that, which deliberately makes not a thing at all about the fact that they're different backgrounds. But then in the job, they do a psychometric test, and they ask her, they give her the word black and she doesn't say white, or they give him or they give her the word white and she doesn't say black, and it's like she's obviously thought about it. So they bring race into it. And then there's the episode where he's asked to take over as the commander of Moonbase.
Yeah.
And he thinks that there's a race issue. And Commander Straker makes a whole thing about, oh no, I don't see race. And it's the only moment, I'll be honest with you, especially in the light of, what's going on in politics right now, where I just thought, that's a shame with the scripting, because Ed Straker uses the line. Is he Ed Straker? If I made it up. I keep calling him Ed Straker. He's Commander Straker.
Yeah, Commander Straker, Ed Straker, yeah.
And he's Ed Bishop as well, okay.
Yeah.
He says, I don't care if you're green, yellow, or blue or something. And, the only people who ever say that in real life tend to be racists.
Yeah.
Or they tend to be people who've just not thought about the reality of what racism is like. The point is there aren't green, or, well, there are in UFO, obviously. But he doesn't like them, though. But, in real life, there aren't people who are green or blue or, or whatever. There are black people, and they experience things differently because of racial prejudice. And that was it's the only line I can think of in that show, which I think is dated really badly because it shows a lack of awareness of the very issues that the show clearly was aware of.
Yeah.
And it doesn't ring true to Commander Straker to say that. Like, he's basically being less racist than the black guy who's thinking about it. I think it was trying too hard to make a point about the future.
Yeah. When they didn't need to, because they were doing it implicitly by just doing the show. Yeah. You've ticked off my diversity box 100%, covering that sort of stuff. We mentioned the aliens briefly, and you've just mentioned them again with the green race. From your experience of watching episode to episode now, could you tell me what those aliens really want? And what that is a reflection of? I mean, because you could go down the environmental route, because there's the episode where they're speaking through the guy and saying our natural resources are depleted and we must come to Earth. That's sort of slightly at odds with the body snatchers thing and introducing some sympathy, or is it a lie? I mean,
it's interesting because early on it sort of establishes this idea of them as mutilating body snatchers, and that they're kind of a vampire breed, aren't they? They need humans to rejuvenate themselves. But then by the very last episode, they've been planting bombs to kill 80,000 people in Turkey in 1974, and there was this other bomb that they planted in 1970 in the English countryside to blow up half of England. And I thought, well, is it because they're going to come and raid the bodies? Because they never seem to send through more than one or two craft at a time.
Yeah.
And I wonder if it's a shame that, in working out the world, because clearly it's such a successfully built world. And that's one of the reasons fans love it. They didn't think through what is the technological capability of this alien race? Why are they coming? And, is there a giant mothership on the way? To sort of extract all these bodies and take them back, because that would make sense. And I don't mind the idea that it might be only revealed bit by bit, but I don't think it was consistent, and the stories jumped around too much. So I sometimes think it's a bit like Tales of the Unexpected, portfolio wise, where it's a self-contained little dark story with a twist in the tail. So the one about the couple who are plotting to murder the husband, square triangle, and it ends with them at the grave. That is an episode of Tales of the Unexpected, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it literally could have been Roald Dahl writing that, and actually it's an alien who came in rather than the husband. And you just think, well, that's kind of the waste of an episode, because I like the idea the aliens aren't in every episode. I like that you can't quite see them. It's amazing how sinister, basically, the view of aliens is they're Italians with contact lenses. And
in green liquid, in green food colouring.
And the green liquid thing, I mean, it's just so great. I think maybe the biggest sign that they hadn't thought it through properly was, the great episode, Ordeal, when Colonel Foster is abducted from the health club. And when they finally get him back and they're trying to pump all the green liquid out of his lungs and his mask, and it's really well done. And then it's a whole Dallas coming out of the shower. It was just a dream reveal.
Yeah.
Why did they do that? Do you know why? Did they talk about that?
I don't think so. I've got no particular
because it's a shame
notice on that dream thing.
You always then had this idea that Colonel Foster was someone who'd been an alien, and you never knew if something might be reactivated in him, which is such a great trope in science fiction, isn't it? When you've come back from the other side, it's like the Manchurian Candidate. He could have been he could have been a psychic bomb, couldn't he?
I was going to say it's a Tony Barwick script. Just looking at my little list here, and
that episode, he wrote some good Space 1999 episodes.
Oh, I mean, he was with Dad since Thunderbirds, I think, and lots of Captain Scarlet and stuff. But he did like a dream episode.
Yeah, I just thought it was a shame that it turned out to be a dream, because then it completely undermines the seriousness. There's that amazing scene where he comes out of the sauna and there are all those bodies strewn around the gym on the equipment, which is still running. And, there's just little touches like that. I can just mention Vladek Shabel,
yes.
Thinking of the James Bond connection. Again, Adam Hardwick was saying he thinks that, your dad was really good at spotting this amazing actor and realizing he, what potential he had. And he's such a great role, the Doctor.
He is very characterful.
Yeah, but then you realize, no, he means well. And yes, there's so many great characters. And I love all the James Bond overlaps. Like Lois Maxwell turns up in.
Yeah. Well, she was in Stingray.
She is a Stingray, but to actually see her, knowing that she's been in several James Bond films and thinking, but she's still the secretary. Yeah.
We almost had Joanna Lumley in UFO.
I've seen the still of her in her audition wig. I must say, I do like the wigs. And I love the logic of, in the future, wigs will be no big deal. And it's kind of like a uniform. You don't have to do your hair. So you just put a wig on.
You think, because there's all sorts of fan explanations of the wigs being, anti-static or anti-radiation or something.
But the men don't wear them.
No, I know. That's the weird thing. So, wigs as uniform, that's the simplest explanation. People don't often say that, but I'm happy to, award the prize for best explanation to you, Samira, for that. You're right. It's just a uniform element along with the, very close-fitting and bright silver stuff.
And the jumpsuits that the men are wearing. I actually have this weird memory of the early 70s because I remember what fashions used to be in shops. And certainly the tunic top over trousers or the sleeveless sort of jumpsuit, that was how people dressed. And there's something of the unisex fashion world, which is also really coming in the early 70s. And that was partly about being kind of post-patriarchal. But, dungarees, the fact that you could see all these men wearing identical jumpsuits, which actually women would have been wearing ones like that too. It's sort of, it's not sexually aggressive. It just looks really smart.
Yeah.
No one's wearing a tie.
No. Yeah, so collars and ties are out.
Some of those patriarchal sort of, signifiers of authority. Although I have to say, when Colonel Lake in that Time Lash episode, when she's wearing that amazing, really snug-fitting purple blouse with a little necktie, little scarf fluttering, and the skin-tight trousers, she looks fantastic. And the rest of the time, she's in quite a matronly smock, which is not that flattering. And I also find it odd because I suddenly went where I'd seen her, and of course, she's one of the chief wives of the Qazi of Calabar in Carrying Up the Khyber. Have you seen that film?
No, I didn't know she was in that.
Oh, yeah. So she, it is one of the best of those Carry-On films, and it's also shot at Pinewood, and I'm pretty sure that the Residency is the same building they used in UFO as bits of the hospital, and there's a garden and stuff. Anyway, Joan Sims has run off with the Qazi of Calabar, the kind of local ruler, and so his wives start coming one by one to meet Sidney Rough Diamond and offer themselves to say, in our tradition, what he has done unto you, you're entitled to do unto him. So basically, she's the first of the wives who comes along in a sari. And she has that very dignified voice. She's basically saying, you can have sex with me. Or a spot of tiffin, as it is
described. A spot of tiffin. Amazing.
Just having a spot of tiffin. Don't disturb me. And it was just weird thinking she made that. And then 2 years later, she is, a really senior military commander in UFO. So again, super credit to your dad for giving her such a great role.
Well, Wanda was brilliant. And she is very fond of her Colonel Lake role. I bumped into her in a pub a couple of years ago, and she remembers it so fondly. And in fact, I think at the time they hadn't long finished shooting the Star Trek film that Benedict Cumberbatch was in. I can't remember which one it was. The where he's playing Khan, the recent J.J. Abrams one.
Star Trek Into Darkness.
Yeah, I think so. But J.J. Abrams, UFO fan, it turns out. And
is that why he put Eva, whatever her name is, into a silver bikini?
Oh,
do you remember that scene where she has to strip? They have to strip to get into a spacesuit, and she's a silver bikini. And,
hadn't even thought.
And all the guys are clocking her, and she goes, "What?" And it's such a gratuitous moment. It's
something you'd only expect from UFO in.
Well, I think UFO didn't do that. UFO didn't do
true.
That.
It was more about the. I was thinking the miniskirt changeover. That's the closest they got.
But he did it tastefully.
well, I'll try and find out. But yeah, she was. Go on. Sorry.
Well, I just trying to remember. So, in the rec room, I've loved the whole world because it does anticipate Space 1999. They've got that meal wall. Did you notice what the meal options are?
No.
Right. So there's American, there's Russian, there's Chinese, there's English, and then I think there's Italian and French. But the thing I thought was an American meal and an English meal.
Yeah.
Like, those are two completely separate options.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. I wonder where, well, it wouldn't surprise me if that was a dad-derived thing, actually.
Well, I think it was just sweet because I love the idea of it being international, like it's a proper international space station. And this is, I can't remember when Mir was launched, but, in the early 70s, there was certainly going to be a lot of stuff about different nations kind of in space together, where on Earth they might actually be, in sort of political tension. But the idea that Americans needed a separate meal option from the English in the confines of a small space station with limited options was,
sweet.
I thought, hilarious. So sorry, I didn't interrupt you, but there's just things like that. I love the look of. Do you know why they didn't do more episodes set in space?
I honestly don't. I mean,
it's just a budget thing, but it just seems a shame because it was obviously they built the sets.
Yeah, I mean, I guess just evolving the idea as they went and working out what worked best in the balance. You quite often see that, don't you, with the Anderson shows? I think the first 5 or 6 episodes, there's a real sense of finding their feet. Like you say with the alien story not really being that developed or that well thought through. Things where, due to time or whatever else, or inexperience of doing live action potentially, that there were things that weren't quite set in stone at the start, and so changed, pacing included, and all sorts of other stuff, and the amount of whiskey that Straker drank too.
I love that. He can't be at home with his wife because he's got to build this really important new base, but it's got to have like 10 different drink options in a built-in cabinet,
spirits dispenser,
and who comes to top it up because it's all fitted, isn't it? And he's got several different kinds of glass. Like, do you want a tumbler or a highball? And he's got his orrery built into a little alcove, where the moon and the earth are sort of rotating.
But these are all little kind of aspirational bits which I would associate with Dad again. He wanted to have his fancy office with these fancy bits and pieces, and his dad made them sort of meager living by selling cigarette dispensers. So I can totally see how Dad would have thought, well, the next natural thing, obviously, on from that is a spirits dispenser that's built in. Every office executive will have one.
Yeah, do you know, your dad reminds me a bit of my dad, who also, my dad came to Britain, like a lot of immigrants, very poor, penniless, hadn't finished school. And he started working as a clerk at Reader's Digest, and he built his own business and became really successful. And he loved, even now he's retired, in his flat, he has a room where he has a big office desk, as if he's still signing papers and things. And and I loved going to visit his office because he always had executive toys, and he loved buying nice clothes. And although my dad doesn't drink, just having the toys, like we had one of the first video recorders in 1975.
Oh, there you go.
I bet your dad was an early adopter. I mean, he invented half this stuff, didn't he?
Oh, well, you credit him and the teams, I suppose, with inspiring a lot of the stuff. But no, certainly with the VHS or whatever it was at the time, whatever the video player was, he had one imported from somewhere.
Philips top loader. The tapes were this thick. They were like a square box, like a brick. They held 1 hour, but they were like, I guess it's 2-inch tape, 1 or 2, that size.
But when everybody, it was so early on that when it got to customs, he got a sort of emergency phone call, and they said, "What is this?" And they were sort of getting ready to get the bomb squad in, essentially, because it was this unknown technology they hadn't seen pass through customs before. It must have come from, I don't know, Japan maybe, or maybe from the States. I don't know, but that was one of his favorite stories to tell, that he, almost set up a bomb alert by bringing in a tape player.
All his love of screen technology really worked, because all those little monitors where you'd have maps and graphics, and they still look great, like watching UFO. Yes, you're conscious that it was made at a moment in time, but when they're watching screens, apart from the fact that they're black and white, you just think, this is great. It works. It's convincing. It's within the logical reality of its world, and within technological limits of what was possible. It looks great.
It does. Samira, I can see our time ticking away, so I've got three final questions for you, and you can throw in any other tidbits you like along the way. having recently reviewed the whole series, what is your favorite episode? And you're not allowed to say, oh, well, I like this one, but also this is basically you're never allowed to watch any other episode ever again, and we're going to junk them all from existence. You're only allowed one to survive.
I think it might be The Cat with 10 Lives.
And why?
Because it's got so many great elements. It's got that sort of weird supernatural element although I don't understand why they have a Ouija board. As a party, they go to the Ouija board. But the idea of the cat that's possessed, that is kind of a cat's paw that's directing him. That young actor who was also in The Prisoner, Alex, I want to say Jenner, but it's not. I'm going to find his name. I've got it open here, cast.
I've got it there.
Alexis Canner.
Great name.
Yeah, amazing actor. And actually, if you read his history, he's of Jewish heritage and his family fled Europe from Nazism. But he's just this incredible, compelling on-screen presence. And the episode is brilliantly plotted. It's got this whole issue about alien abduction because his wife has been kidnapped. So it's got all the elements of UFO, and threat. And it's also got stuff going on in all the bases. I'm pretty sure it takes place in the Shadow Base on Earth and in space.
Yeah.
And, there's a huge amount of peril right up to the last minute. So I think that's a perfect episode. Excellent
choice. Your base mention then leads me perfectly on to my next question. If you could, you're offered a job by Shadow, by that Shadow from that series, as you saw it, you can work in the main base under the studio, moon base. You could be a member of crew on Skydiver. Where do you choose to work if you're employed by Shadow?
It's hard because actually you take them on each of them on their own. They all seem very much dependent on Commander Straker. So I think I would have to choose Shadow Base on Earth because there's a potential to go anywhere. Plus, I could stock that minibar the way I want it. And I really loved his Nehru suits.
Yeah. I think you could rock a Nehru suit.
I think I could rock a Nehru suit. I might even bring one of the purple wigs down to Earth and just mix things up a bit. But I think, and also the way he walked around with his briefcase. I used to have a little metal briefcase when I was a kid. And in fact, I found a photograph the other day and I had the key from it on a string around my neck, like I was walking around my own nuclear codes. Amazing. And I think there's something of the Commander Straker in me where I could just be in charge, walking around that base. And it's all nice and clean lines,
Samira Straker.
Yeah.
I can totally see that. My final wrap-up question is, clearly there are lots of awesome in-depth elements actually that have crept through personal interest in geopolitics at the time and science technology and personal stories that bleed in. Obviously, one of the most regularly asked questions we get is, why haven't you remade UFO? And there are many reasons for that sort of thing because rights and stuff are very complicated. But do you think UFO is the type of story that is worth retelling? Does it need to be retold? Should it be retold? Or is it a perfect little time capsule that does its job admirably?
So I think it's really timely to revisit it for a couple of reasons. One is literally the day before we're speaking, there was a big feature in the Washington Post about why we should be looking again at alien abduction stories. And, the US government recently revealed just how many sightings there had been, which are not, made public. So I just think it'd be fun to look at that. But also because we're in an age of real conspiracy theory and all this anxiety about vaccines, about all kinds of things, you could put all those elements into a rebooted series, couldn't you? And you could be dealing with anti-vaxxers who think that there's aliens, involved. And I just think, the UFO was emblematic of, I was reading Carl Sagan wrote a book about conspiracy theories and scientific rationalism. And he was writing in the early 90s, I think. And he talked about this huge spike in UFO sightings and what it represented. And it was all to do with the decline of religion. So I just think it's definitely due a visit. And also because you could be going back to the Chronicles, couldn't you? That the show was itself referring back to the fact that there was known to be all these conspiracy theories. But now you really do have records of just how much was covered up. So, and then you've got the role of people like Elon Musk who are potentially regarded as heroes, but are also, I think, really dangerous characters, in their own agendas.
So another few threads to build on, but yeah.
There's so much, but what do UFOs represent to different interests? Why do they still fascinate us? And the idea of them as environmental rescue, which is what Elon Musk's supposed fantasy, isn't it? That, we've trashed this planet, so let's just go and find another one and spend billions and colonize it, which is as if that's a better solution than trying to save the one we're on. So you could put all those kind of things with each other. And also, I just think you could really revisit the kind of the office politics, with a modern eye, where I think, although the show was trying to do it, you would really now be able to give really interesting, prominent roles to women and people of colour. And, I just think you could fully realise the ambition I think the show had.
Just take it even further.
Yeah, and I think, maybe you wouldn't set it under a TV studio. I don't know. Although I think that episode where, is it Mindbender?
Yeah.
Where, it's like someone's having a breakdown on air. I mean, I don't want to accuse your dad of, being, but that episode is really weird when you stop and think about it.
I think a lot of episodes of UFO are really weird when you think about them to any sort of, dissection.
But to show the sets of UFO on a set,
yes,
and to break the fourth
meta
wall
side of it
quite so dramatically. But no, it's great. And as I say, it's been a total delight to discover it at this stage in my life and realise why it intrigues people.
Well, I've absolutely loved talking to you about it. Again, this happens when I talk to you, Samira. I get additional insights on stuff about Dad, which has sort of been stored there, and they suddenly come to light. So, thank you for watching through all of it.
My pleasure. Thank you for asking me
about it. If people want to find you online, where do they do that?
I'm on Twitter at Samira Ahmed UK. I also have a website, samiraahmed.co.uk, and I have a podcast called How I Found My Voice.
Brilliant. And I assume they can just search How I Found My Voice on all good podcasting
it's
platforms.
My Intelligence Squared, but it's on. It's actually been on the front page of Apple Podcasts recently because they had a whole collection on sisterhood, and they picked a couple of my episodes.
Brilliant. Okay, right. We'll go and listen to that right now. Samira, thanks so much.
Oh, thank you so much, Jamie.
Oh, thank you, Samira. I almost said Samara then. That's interesting.
Oh,
no, I definitely mean Samira Ahmed.
You definitely do.
And if you want to follow all of Samira's shenanigans and thoughts and news and updates, you can go to samiraahmed.co.uk. That's SAMIRAHMED.co.uk. Samira Ahmed.
Yeah.
That's right, isn't it?
The way you said the A in the middle there made it sound like you were going A.
Well, actually,
HMED.
I'm now looking at this and thinking, is that actually it, or is there a missing A in my notes here? I think there is.
No, it looks all right to me.
No, it's wrong.
Where? What is it then?
It should be samiraahmed.co.uk, not Samira Ahmed.
Oh, I see. Yeah,
right.
Yeah. That's right.
So that should be SAMIRAAHM. ed.co.uk or follow her name. Samira Ahmed UK on Twitter.
It's literally just her name.
Yes, all right, thank you. But people might not know how to spell it. That's all.
Okay, all right.
They definitely don't now, thanks to me. Also listen to Samira's fantastic podcast, How I Found My Voice, available through all good podcast apps and some bad ones too.
Well, probably.
Next week, I had a rather lovely chat with... hang on. I've got to be careful how I say this because I made a promise to this guest that I would only use his formal title once and once only. So I'm going to use it next week. But for now, I'm going to say Richard Taylor from Weta in New Zealand.
Right.
Richard and I had a fantastic chat. Really enjoyable. Covered all sorts of bases. And you'll be able to hear part one of that next week.
Lovely. But now, inspired by Samira Ahmed. And
as many of us have been.
Yes. Well, I sat down and watched the first episode to UFO shortly before we did this podcast.
Did you?
Yes. And I found it really... I have seen it before, but a long, long time ago.
Yeah.
And it was interesting watching it, bearing in mind her comments from last week.
Mm.
And a couple of thoughts. I mean, yes, okay, you can go on about the kind of the casual sexism. That's... You almost have to take that as read for anything made during that time. It's fine.
Oh, totally, yeah.
But actually, there are a lot of women in the show, and they're in charge of the moon base for a start.
That's true, yeah. There's a lot of forward-thinking stuff in there.
Absolutely. But secondly, how gruesome it is. If you look at it, try and look at it with fresh eyes, the whole idea of the organ harvesting and it's just fairly dark, isn't it?
I mean, it is a grim premise. It's a step up in grimness from Captain Scarlet, which felt grim for kids, but it's certainly more adult swinging, isn't it?
Would it have felt, do you think? Perhaps Podstrons, you can answer me this. If you remember watching UFO on its first release back in the 70s, was it so different to anything you'd seen before, Gerry Anderson related? Was it such a different world to Captain Scarlet. Was that problematic? Was it exciting? Did you like the difference, or do you not feel there was much difference? Interesting.
Yeah, I think it's the point at which you get a bit of a split in fandom. A lot of people who found UFO as the first ever thing they ever watched from Anderson. Others who they were growing up with the puppet shows and felt it was a natural progression.
Yeah.
And probably others who were still kids and maybe weren't allowed to watch the shows or couldn't watch it consistently because of the broadcast slots. So it's a bit of a turning point in Anderson fandom, I would say.
It really is. It really is. I think I would have been quite happy for my kids to sit down with me and watch the Super Marination series. I'm not sure, if they've been very young, if I've been too happy to have them sitting beside me to watch the first episode of UFO.
Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
There we go.
There we are. Just my thoughts.
Yes, let us know your thoughts.
I know you didn't ask for them, but I'm giving them anyway.
Say again, I lost that.
I said I know you didn't ask for them, but I'm giving you them anyway.
Thank you very much. Yes, I'm very glad to have them, despite not asking for them. Now, Richard, have you got any other further thoughts from Podstrons?
Well, now, over on our YouTube channel, people have been commenting on the past couple of pods. For example, O.D. Dillon. Now, a suggestion here for you, Jamie. You need to negotiate with Nickelodeon Kids to run a lot of the never-seen-in-the-US shows archived by Dad, especially the Terrorhawks and that Castle one. There, okay? Told you, isn't it?
Lavender Castle.
That'll be the one.
Well, that wouldn't be up to me. That would be up to Universal, or DreamWorks, sorry, who own the rights to Lavender Castle, sadly. But, also, I'm not really sure that Nickelodeon would screen Terrorhawks these days.
Sure.
Bit too scary.
Yeah. Keith Gooch posted another great episode of the Gerry Anderson podcast with all the usual humorous gubbings between Richard and Jamie. The fab fact was interesting. I've never thought that Billy Gibson was a metaphor for Jerry's older brother Lionel, but I will now. I would contest Jamie's assertion that Mitch the Monkey was much beloved. I can't stand the little beggar.
Fair enough.
Yep. Simon Drax says every week these brilliant imaginative lads, Jamie, Richard and Chris, allow us access to a very special clubhouse where all are welcome, wanderers from many places, some from under the sea, from the sky, some from distant suns, all coming together in the Gerry Anderson podcast because the future is fantastic.
Ah.
And finally,
True.
Anthony Ashton just posted simply, brilliant.
Oh.
Which I think sums it up.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
That's our kind of tagline, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So do pop over to our YouTube channel. All sorts of stuff to see there. Chris Dale posts things very regularly. You can catch up with all the primers. May even be some free episodes of various things. And of course, the podcast is hosted there every week too.
All those things and many more.
Yeah.
Now, I can see over there, Chris has just finished licking his fingers. I guess he's finished on the honey. He's looking pretty bloated and a bit tired, but also, pretty pleased. Well done, Chris. You made it through, and I'm sure he'll give us his selection of the finest local bee produce very shortly. But until then, I'm sure he's ready with his randomizer to hit the button and choose a random Gerry Anderson episode and watch it and give us his thoughts and comments. So, Chris, would you like to do that?
I hope he wipes his fingers first.
Oh, yes. Sticky randomizer.
What a wonderful sunset. Crisp.
Yes, it's always been one of my favourites. Which is why I'm very glad you managed to pull it up on the randomizer.
Goodness.
Hello everybody, no time for a full introduction today as Grandma here has already selected today's episode, and it's Space 1999, The Last Sunset. So, welcome back to Space 1999 on the randomizer, and I think we can go in saying...
Planet Ariel with its atmosphere.
This is my favourite episode of the entire series, and I will fully admit...
What does that do to your sense of symmetry, Victor?
Oh, if we go into orbit, I shan't care about symmetry.
It's perhaps not the... objectively, it's perhaps not the best.
Computer predicts.
Oh, yeah.
Especially if you're looking for accuracy in the science department.
Come in, Alan.
Although if you're looking for accuracy in Space 1999, you may be onto a bit of a losing thing.
The oxygen content is more than 4 times that of Earth.
But we've discovered this planet Ariel, and we're all very excited about the possibilities of settling here.
Stand by to fire your retros in 30 seconds.
It all looks very promising. Everything seems to be going well.
Computer's flight plan for their descent to the planet's surface. No problems? No problems.
Except for the inevitable crash landing at the other end, but we've taken that into account.
I have scanner contact. Alien object approaching.
Uh-oh. Another lovely planet design.
Alien object closing fast.
Cue the reused music from Thunderbird 6. I'm not a mad fan of the effects of the little probe whizzing around.
What kind of missile?
Always nice to see eagles banking and weaving to avoid being hit, but because the probe is so small, you can't... It looks like what it is, a little model being waved around on a string. But the build-up to it hitting the eagle is quite fun. Especially as Alan and co-pilot... Is that Pete Johnson? Was a sort of semi-regular co-pilot for Alan in the first season. They both cover their faces as if to say, oh, well, that's it for us.
Alan! Alan! We're alive, Commander. It hasn't gone off.
So you don't have to cry about me this time. Yeah, that was the last time we saw Space 1999 on the Randomizer, I think, was...
7, return to base.
Was Collision Course.
Personnel from Launch Pad 1. Crash unit, stand by!
Well, that was looking positive until it wasn't. We've now got this thing attached to Eagle 1 as it returns to Alpha.
Approaching now for final descent.
All right, Alan. We won't take any chances. We'll bring you in on automatic. Pad 1 is sealed off.
As soon as you land, skip all touchdown procedures and get clear as quickly as you can.
Fine, Commander. So far, it hasn't made a move.
Well, my guess is it won't. At least not until you bring it home. All right, Paul, bring him in.
Of course, you could land somewhere away from the base if you're that worried about it, and have Alan and Johnson come in on foot. But no, we'll bring it into the base because we kind of have to for the story to work. And this is a nice, very nice shot of the. I think this is the largest of the Eagle models, soon to be up for auction. I understand. Landing on the launch pad here, and you get this lovely close-up of the foot pads taking the weight of the Eagle as it lands. I think that's the only time you see those pads moving in the show. Everything seems all right. We're taking our harnesses off very slowly. And some reused Secret Service music here. Lots of reused music in this one, I seem to recall.
Victor, what do you get on the scanners?
Nothing. Can't get any readings at all. And the object resists any remote analysis technique we have.
We'll have to bring it in.
Well, no, you don't have to. But you have.
Intelligent civilization with an atmosphere similar to Earth's sees Earthman approaching and tries to prevent him. So by creating a diversion and a continuing mystery, he does just that. Plausible?
Yes. And why?
This part of it kind of reminds me actually of sort of chimps in lab experiments poking and prodding at various toys that have been thrown in.
As he likes. Don't let's waste any more time in getting back to that planet.
Which I suppose fits in with a lot of
We'll have all the time we need.
this show's attitude towards humanity's exploration of space.
Anything so far, Victor?
Not much, I'm afraid. Weight 428. Composition, still unknown.
Inert?
Oh, totally.
And that's a record time for one of Victor's statements to be rendered false or mistaken. It's inert, and then it spits out a little antenna and starts spewing gas everywhere.
Victor, analyze that gas sooner than possible.
Alan, stand near me and look ruggedly handsome.
Technical section, seal it off, then open its airlocks to the surface. Come on.
I like this as well, seeing the gas escaping through the base as it's being pumped out by the probe, and it's lots of Alphans running around. And the gas, I think, reaches parts of the base that you wouldn't normally see that often. Regular running extras. Quentin Pierre and Mike Stevens, don't know what they were doing in the same room together, but they can't get out of there fast enough. That's it, breaking windows, and the gas is venting onto the surface. Tearing through the Eagle hangar. Oh no, it took out stuntman Alf Joint, who played Steiner, I think, in Breakaway. It's going through the travel tube tunnels. It's spewing up what looks like pieces of shredded newspaper from the bottom of a launch pad. Possibly could be the charred remains of an eagle that's exploded there, or several eagles.
Sealed off and ventilated. Good. Pressure in the technical area was up by 80 before we could activate the airlocks. It couldn't get out fast enough.
I love as well that we have a show where we have all these sets and parts of the base established, and we have physical models.
Less than a meter.
To show it all, so that when something like this happens,
that's impossible.
We're not reliant on being told what's happening. We can actually see it. And now here are reinforcements, lots more probes that nobody detected approaching the base until one person happened to look out the window.
Commander, we're being invaded.
Yep, Tanya was on the case.
Gone.
A very Tanya-heavy episode, this one.
It's
relatively speaking.
That thing's brought us air.
Oh, and here we go, coming up to one of my favourite moments of the whole show. All the probes have settled on the surface, the atmosphere is building, and now we get the blue and the red of a sky, and that gorgeous shot of Ariel's sun looming over the lunar horizon. And everyone rushing to the windows to look. All our regulars, all our extras, even Dr. Matthias, who really had no reason to be anywhere near that building. He's turned up, and we're all gawking at the beauty of it, because it is beautiful. It's a lovely image for this show.
Red sunrise. Blue sky.
I remember those.
An atmosphere. We've got an atmosphere.
Yay! And as with Crywolf, I almost want to end the episode there. It could almost be a nice self-contained, happy ending. They have a nice atmosphere and a new world. But that wouldn't be as satisfying as the rest of this episode. Now we've got to explore this new world, see what it's like out there.
Gravity is increasing, Paul. By the time we go into orbit, it will be almost the same as Earth's.
Yay!
Computer's telling us nice stories today.
Computer never tells
story.
Oh, everyone is happy. Even Helena and Kano, who aren't normally the happiest of people, they're like, yes, this is great fun.
Of course, I can only test for elements that we know and can identify.
And of course, seeing the characters happier, it makes their personalities, their performances seem a bit more real.
It begins to thin off rapidly at 20,000. Now on Earth...
Again, I should stress, I'm not one of these people who go, oh, the thing about Space 1999 is they were puppets, but they were humans pretending to be puppets. It's like, no.
And live in it.
Anyone who makes that criticism against those shows, by and large, has not seen these shows.
Attention, everyone. Dr. Russell is satisfied, as far as she can tell from processed data, that the atmosphere out there is breathable and safe.
If you can trust a word she says.
Now, what I'd like now are 2 volunteers to go out there and make sure.
Oh, and everyone volunteers, but of course...
Sandra, Paul.
Oh.
Now, I want you to remember that
why couldn't they have picked...
final stage of a scientific program.
I don't know who's there. Sarah Bullen, Andy Dempsey, Loftus Burton, Mike Stevens.
Else, I'd like you to run a constant check on their joy levels.
Oh, I hate that line. Let's humour the commander, though, by laughing at it.
Confirm airlock pressure equalized with atmosphere.
Confirmed, Paul. You're clear to move out now.
I have to wonder what Martin Landau's reaction was to seeing that line, because we hear there's famously stories of how he reacted to certain things in scripts for the second season, namely writing his feelings down on the scripts themselves. I wonder how he felt about lines like that. He still had to say it's a terrible line. I think it's the only low point of this episode, because as I said, I love this one. I love this image of Sandra and Paul out on the surface.
You're now breathing more air than oxygen, and the pressures inside and outside your suits are equal. How do you feel?
I feel fine.
My pulse rate is increasing.
Yes, I'm monitoring that. Chalk that up to the excitement.
I also love that Sandra's spacesuit is so much smaller than anyone else's. I mean, there's literally, I don't think anyone else on the show could have reused that spacesuit except Xenia. Now Paul's taken off his gloves, loosening the fastenings of his helmet, lifting the visor, and... more reused music, supercar this time.
Smells very good.
Like what?
Like country air.
And this is a lovely scene to give to, it's not Koenig and Helena are out there, as you might expect. One of the strengths of this episode is the focus on the other regulars besides them. Now everyone's set up outside having a nice party. Alan and Tanya are having a spot of lunar badminton. Everyone else is out there enjoying the sun and drinks. And Tanya's lost the match. Oh, and here we go. Here's the scene.
Oh. We're going to have to worry about sitting in drafts.
Yes, the infamous window. And I'm not going to go too much into that because it comes up on social media so often Why would a moon base have windows that could pull down? And of course, we know there was a deleted scene where the windows were put in, and then there was a deleted scene later on where the windows were taken out, because the people on Alpha are not idiots. They wouldn't have something like that just sat there, at least not in the first season. I will say, against the show, they probably
Anything that gets me out of Alpha
shouldn't have left that bit in if they were going to remove the installation and the removal of the windows. But hey ho. I know I'm annoyed because I've waffled all over another nice scene.
If this is the end of one life, we have to start to build a new one, to live like human beings again.
And it's early days, but their thoughts are already turning to the future.
sound I miss most in the silence of space.
Birdsong?
And it's nice as well to see that, Prentice, Hancock and Xenia can deliver the goods just as well as Landau and Bain.
Cooped up.
And Morse.
There are thoughts we just can't allow ourselves to think.
Because Paul and Sandra, although, they're fairly prominent in the show, by and large, they're just there to say things that really anyone else could say. So it's nice, it's so nice to have an episode like this and realise, oh wait, yeah, these are people, real people with their own lives and hopes and dreams and feelings for each other, as they
New Earth.
express quite clearly there.
Outside Alpha, we could fertilize the lunar dust and raise crops.
All we need is a rainfall.
Oh, we can make that. Yeah, here's rotten with humidity. All we've got to do is to start the cycle. Sowing cloud-forming crystals in the sky.
And it's a lovely idea as well that they finally find the home they've been looking for, and it's on their doorstep. It also sort of strengthens the idea that how Alpha survives long term, and also where they get the materials to build the Eagles is that so much of what they need is available on the moon already. And I don't know whether that would be the case in real life, but I think this episode certainly supports the idea that within this show, the moon itself is a convenient source of minerals and raw materials. And we are now building up to our first rainstorm on the moon. Of course, Paul and Sandra are already out in it. All the extras are having fun, and yep, Alan's going to head out there with Tanya and a few other extras. And just frolic in the rain and the mud. Oh, this looks like so much fun. And it's, again, so nice to see the regular extras getting a lot more screen time this week. I mean, not only Suzanne Roquette, who is sort of borderline regular character and extra.
Hey, Paul! Tomorrow we'll build a swimming pool.
Tomorrow we'll build the new Alpha.
Oh, that's lovely. But people like Mike Stevens and Andy Dempsey and people who've been in Main Mission the whole series. Let's give them more to do here.
See? All those craters will fill up and become circular lakes. Oh, John, it's going to be a beautiful new world.
I also like, there's somebody at Paul's chair in Main Mission. He doesn't want to go outside. Whoever that is, I can't recognise the actor. He can't be bothered to go out there and have fun. He'd rather sit indoors.
Alpha is built in a crater.
First rainstorm in months, and he's going to sit indoors.
As hard as you hope it will. Right at the bottom of one of those lakes will be Moon Base Alpha.
Oh dear. I also didn't see Kano frolicking outside. So now it's time to send out a reconnaissance flight. See where else we can live on the moon.
This expedition will be under the overall command of Dr. Russell.
Uh-oh.
The job ahead for these people is to find the best place in which to live, so that we may begin our new life, our new future. I'd like you to join me now in wishing them good luck.
Yes.
Oh, lots of smilings and shaking hands and wavings. I also wonder, again, it's not really hugely relevant to the episode that they bring this up, to what extent Alpha might be secure against being submerged. More dialogue for the extras. These people never ever speak, and now we can't stop hearing from them. And yeah, there's the 3 stars of the show watching the Eagle depart. John Koenig, Victor Bergman, and Tanya. Tanya right there in the centre of the mains there.
Cloud forming over the Taurus Mountains.
Oh, lovely.
Fine.
Yeah, but I do wonder to what extent Alpha, being a lunar base, might potentially be able to survive.
That's why I opted for this.
Being submerged if its crater becomes a lake.
Data transmitter's beginning to act like a primitive crystal set.
And who's been left in charge of computer while Kano's taken over Paul's seat?
Computer can't read much of this data. There's too much interference.
We've got all the filters in. It's the best we can get.
Tanya again.
Going into an electric storm or something. An atmosphere is a mixed blessing.
Not for me, it isn't.
Communications are bad, Commander. We're back to the static and crackle of Earth.
Because basically we've sent off all our regular characters, bar John, Victor and Carno. We kind of need to give someone else some lines. Here's Tanya.
Now we're really flying.
Who always should have been more prominent in this show, darn it. I have a feeling this episode might possibly be the last time she speaks, which is a real shame.
Hello, Alpha.
Speaking of real shames...
Eagle 2-8. I'm getting severe turbulence on the run-up to the Taurus Mountains. I'm going over the top.
Alan's in an Eagle, and there's a storm. Needless to say, it's not going to end well.
We're not receiving you, 2-8. But if you can hear me, Alan, your orders are to return to base immediately.
I also love how when an Eagle is in trouble and they're shooting on the cockpit set,
I want their exact position.
The camera gets right in there, and the way the camera is moving
We're losing power.
does so much to suggest the movement of the Eagle itself.
Backup power. Malfunction.
Everything's broken on the Eagle, by the way. I doubt that the Eagle cockpit would have been mounted on, I don't know, anything to sort of simulate that shaking. So the actors presumably would have had to do it for real. That camera does so much to establish the movement of the ship, which of course won't be moving anymore. Surprise, surprise, they've crashed.
Eagle 2-8, come in.
All contact lost with onboard computer.
More lines for Tanya. Extreme close-ups on several of the extras there. Sarah Bull and Mike Stevens, and another guy whose name I can't remember.
I want every Eagle fueled and ready for liftoff.
Oh, wonderful stuff.
Every inch within a radius of 500 miles of their last position. Victor, divide the sector into 28 zones. Matthias.
Yes, Commander?
Load Eagle 1 with medical supplies and rescue equipment. You're coming with me.
Well, I was performing brain surgery on Tony Vidashi, but no, I'll come with you.
Eagle 12 to pad 3.
I love this as well. Establishing for once we have so many Eagles, and here's a blink and you'll miss him appearance by
Eagle 12.
I believe his name is Paul Grist. He's co-pilot to Ken Johnson, or Pete Johnson. Ken Johnson's the Fireball XL5 character, isn't he? And Ken Johnson is the Space 1999 Eagle pilot.
Main mission, we have ignition and liftoff.
This guy, yeah. Paul Grist is playing that guy's co-pilot, and you may recognise Paul Grist.
Main mission to Eagle Fleet.
As Bill Filer from Doctor Who, The Claws of Axos.
Falling to strength 3.
He has no dialogue.
Still the problem over the search area, but good luck.
And I find that strange sometimes you see in this show. Actors who are hired for speaking roles on Doctor Who appear as extras in this. I think, I can't remember the actress's name, but was it Jill Tarrant from Death to the Daleks is an extra in Main Mission for 4 episodes at the start of the series. Paul Grist, I don't think, ever appears in the show again.
She has severe concussion.
Anyway, on the crashed Eagle, things are not going well. Everyone seems okay except poor old Sandra.
She'll be all right.
Because if anything is going to go wrong on this show, it will happen to Sandra.
Every transistor, every condenser. Not one of them isn't blown.
And I've torn my sleeve.
We must have blown out every circuit in the ship.
That means we're totally dependent on Alpha to find us.
Somehow Alan has torn his sleeve, thus exposing his manly arms.
Why don't you give Alan a hand getting us Samira? She'll be all right.
She's lying on the best bubble wrap pillow we can find.
Look, we've got enough food to last us a fortnight. It's about 30 gallons of drinkable water in the tanks. And with 27 serviceable Eagles back at the base.
Plus half a dozen in repair that I've broken in the last week.
Come on.
Well, it all... could have gone better, the whole searching for a new world thing, but so far...
Clear over the last point of radar contact, Command.
Our survivors seem quite cheerful. They seem well stocked with supplies.
Not much of a new world, is it? Not much of a place to be lost in.
And again, strange to see Matthias co-piloting an Eagle. Again, showing that we've got all our regulars crashed on the Survey Eagle or manning strange, unusual posts in Main Mission. Who else do we have left among the regular cast to co-pilot an Eagle? And that's a lovely touch of realism as well, that there would be a huge pile of lunar dust right outside the door because they ploughed straight into it and it's been subsequently buried. So Alan and Paul are taking a look outside.
Some camouflage, eh? They're never going to see us here.
And speaking of they, here they come.
Hey! We're here! We're here! Come back! Come back!
I ripped my sleeve off entirely! Yeah, that's probably establishing why Alan's sleeve was torn earlier. Now he's ripped the whole thing off. Oh dear. But no sign. No. Hasn't gone well at all.
News. They've run out of daylight. The last eagle is returning to base.
Have them refueled immediately.
John, it's looking promising. The moon's curving in nicely towards an orbital station around our new sun.
Yeah, I can't help keeping an eye on what, with Kano manning Paul's chair,
Reach 8 days.
Tanya manning Kano's chair, now it looks like Mike Stevens has taken over manning computer itself.
Conditions on that surface will deteriorate rapidly. Also right.
I may have allowed a greater focus on the other characters in this episode, Victor, but I'm still going to be right about things. And you hear stories about, Martin Landau maybe demanding that X number of lines per script were assigned to him, and he had to come up with the ideas and such.
Some breakfast around here.
So I wonder why, if that was the case, and I suspect to a large extent it might have been, but perhaps unconsciously so on his part, why
Acetic acid.
there's a greater focus on characters that aren't him this week.
Supplies. And the water.
Why was it stored anywhere near the food?
It wasn't. The impact must have carried it into the cargo section along with the main motor.
Yep, we've just discovered all our supplies are useless.
Lucky.
Contaminated by the engines.
We've still got survival rations.
Oh, yeah. And about half a drop of uncontaminated water. Great. It's 120 degrees in the shade out there. What's that going to do to Sandra with a high fever, huh? She needs all the water she can get.
Right, and you make sure the next time they fly over, they can see us, okay?
Let's get this gear outside. We've got to start making some kind of marker.
Paul still hasn't removed any part of his shirt. But Alan is still stumbling around in the wind, half dressed by this point. And again, a clever use of these square supply boxes. Well, they're not square. They're not cubed. They're sort of cube-ish supply boxes we see throughout the series, always being lugged around and falling over, but never really used. And they've got the good idea here to dump a load of them outside to make a marker. They also seem to have one of those salt, gritting boxes, the yellow plastic ones you'd see by the sides of the road on the Eagle.
Eagle 1-5 is grounded, Commander.
Uh-oh.
Grounded?
But Alan isn't here. Who's crashed it?
Stabilizers. So far, 5 Eagles have reported similar faults.
Well, Kenny's going to take this well.
Get those technicians moving, Kano. Get them moving! No Eagle is grounded until I say so. Now go on!
My God, I love yelling at you. Yeah, Kano doesn't really seem that bothered. He knows that anyone who's going to get yelled at around here, it's going to be him. And Koenig's really pacing now.
John, they're breaking their necks in the technical section.
So they should.
It might help if you actually had someone in charge of the technical section.
See, we may not find them at all.
We've got to find them, Victor. We've got to find them.
You saw me crying at the thought of losing Alan. My God, if I'm going to lose 4 of them, I'm going to be absolutely inconsolable.
She'll die out here. 120 degrees by day and freezing by night.
Well, you rooted pretty hard for the crazy idea of settling out here.
Did he?
Instead of going down to the planetarium.
No one reckoned on you flying into a cloud bank for your kicks.
Ooh.
Come on, let's save our energy.
It's about the only time in the series anyone actually questions Alan's, shall we say, technique when it comes to landing eagles.
If we don't survive, Sandra won't make it.
And I do like as well Paul and Alan both being concerned about Sandra. It was kind of I was going to say a running thread, but it wasn't really. It only came up once in the full circle where...
There must be something we can do.
It was briefly hinted that Alan had feelings for Sandra as well as Paul did. But he's put the idea into Paul's head now.
Nice liftoff, Commander. No systems malfunction indicated.
Kano, stop him. For heaven's sake, stop him! Bring him back!
Oh. Why does Victor never phone these things through on his comm log? Why does he always have to come charging into main mission?
Think function on the space?
That's it. And even the model falls apart. I love that the model is falling apart as it crash lands. The one of the is it an engine baffle or a ball or something falls off the back end.
Something we don't know about in the atmosphere, coupled with incessant flying through fine particles of moon dust, Cause very rapid corrosion. Your control system's just seized.
So that dialogue would hint that it was a
parts coated with
a fortunate accident that the model was falling apart as it crash landed.
Strip down one eagle and graphite every exposed surface.
Technical estimate 3 days. They've started already.
They'll have to do it in 2. Now, I don't know whether this is friend or foe, but let's get it out of here, all right?
Oh yeah, because the probe has been in the base the whole time, acting as a reminder that there was a planet out there as well as a new world potentially on the lunar surface.
You're getting better. You're going to be all right.
I thought we had found our home.
We will.
But
I'll find you some more to drink.
has it rained?
Yes, it's rained.
It's rained rainbows and unicorns and lollipops and... Oh, he'll say anything to make her feel better. Now she's gone back to sleep. But Paul and his moustache are still troubled. Oh, the water looks like it's been refilled between shots. Still meant to imply, though, that there isn't much left. Even though it seems to be magically refilling itself. Yep, a different shot now, and the bottle has gone down considerably. It's given Paul the idea to go outside that Alan mentioned earlier. And he's lit to look quite sinister as he makes the decision to go outside. Which, of course, he won't be able to do without disturbing everybody. That's woken Helena up. Alan seems to have slept through it.
Where's Paul? Gone to fetch water.
More recycled music, Secret Service again. I love the fact that through this era of his composing for Anderson shows, Barry Gray was like, well, I've got this old show, the score for this old show that no one watched, and I've got this score for this old film that no one saw. What if I just throw all of that music at it? And it works. Because it's the same composer, you don't immediately tell that it's not quite in the same style as the episodic scores that were recorded earlier in the show. Meanwhile, Helena has had a brief look outside for Paul, but obviously hasn't been able to get too far away from the ship because there's a lot of dust flying around. And Paul is... Yep, she shut the door on him. That's that.
Paul said it had rained.
He did. Oh, yes.
And in a similar vein to me saying about, Martin Landau, you hear stories about how he wanted things this way and that way.
Not really, just...
Switching over to Barbara Bain for a moment, you hear stories about how she had to always look a certain way and she had to be shot in soft focus a lot of the time. I give her credit in this episode that she is quite happy to look not only totally unglamorous but also thoroughly knackered at points in this episode. She looks really done in, as well she might, having survived a spaceship crash and as some of the things we'll later see her being put through in the story. Meanwhile, our man who was trying to walk back to Alpha has found some mushrooms. What looked like some kind of fruit with water in it. So, why not help yourself? Yummy. More Secret Service music to say, oh, this probably isn't a good idea. But somehow, it's given him the strength to produce this little shack type thing.
Home. The new city of Alpha.
But
We found our home. This is our Garden of Eden.
To begin the human race all over again.
And it's lovely as well that you don't immediately see that anything's wrong with Paul because it's been established that he's so intent on...
Where'd you get the steam to be up all night?
...building up Sandra's hopes.
Breakfast?
You don't immediately notice that he's speaking slightly differently here.
Wait a minute. Where did it come from?
Over there, under the rocks. It's growing like mushrooms.
I like as well that there's absolutely no explanation for where this came from by the end of the story.
Testing it. We can't eat it until...
But I've already tested it.
It's implied that it came from the people of Ariel, but,
You've eaten it?
When did they fly by and drop this off, conveniently close to the Eagle?
Paul, we have to be careful.
Helena's starting to get an idea that things have gone wrong.
Doesn't seem to have done him any harm.
He's a bit crazy, but he was always crazy.
He must have got the strength from somewhere.
The way I see it is, it's no accident that the moment I lie down to die, this stuff literally appears in front of my nose.
This is an interesting angle to take with Paul, repainting him as a religious zealot.
Today we not only have hope, but sustenance as well.
Deluded that he's a pioneer of sorts.
We either eat it or die.
And I would have loved to have seen the others eating this and going similarly loopy.
Let's stick to the ration cubes for breakfast while I do what tests I can. Then if it's all right, and you're still all right, we'll all try it.
Just in case it is okay, I'm going mushroom.
I would love to have seen these four absolutely, stoned out their mind on the shrooms. Meanwhile, Koenig is keeping an eye on the aerial probe using a pair of binoculars that I believe appeared in UFO.
Hey, John, you want to look at it that much, you should have left it in the technical section.
You don't have to tell me, Victor. That phony cheerfulness tells me. We're not going into orbit, right?
No, we should have gone to the planet after all.
Oh, dear. Well, never mind.
Somehow I don't think I like the people.
There'll be another planet this time next week.
They gave us air.
Which will turn into an ice cap the moment we pass beyond the warmth of Ariel's sun. And Alpha will be crushed to death.
I know these things, Victor. You wouldn't know them because you're not a scientist.
Proof Eagle.
Ready to go.
I suppose really there was no reason why someone else couldn't have led a flight down to Ariel, but hey-ho. It's too late now.
We're clearing Alpha now on 240.
And this is the third Eagle that Koenig and Matthias have taken out this episode.
I'm not sure that it's safe, but I think maybe we should try.
Of course.
Yeah, what the hell? What could possibly go wrong?
When we get back.
Uh-oh.
We're not going back. We're staying right here to begin our new life.
Oh, this is lovely.
We're given an atmosphere. A freak electrical storm and we're cut off. A freak dust storm and we're buried. A moment of near starvation.
And it's not a logical development for the story necessarily.
The people of that planet have a sense of purpose. And I believe we have one now.
But you need a sort of a personification of an antagonist to resolve this.
We'll build and settle and bring up children. We'll multiply.
And with no guest stars in this episode at all, bar a voice later on.
Pacific and fragile rafts. So will we launch forth into space.
We give this role to Prentice Hancock, who just grabs it with both hands. Meanwhile, Alan's come back, seen the effect the mushrooms have had on Paul, and he doesn't want any part of them.
That was sacred bread, Alan.
Oh.
That was sent to us in our time of need.
I love this stuff.
Paul, wait a minute.
Paul is suddenly interesting.
Pick it up.
It's not something that he's ever really been before. With no disrespect to Prentice Hancock, he just wasn't given the material to work with. Now, unfortunately, all our actors have been replaced with stunt people, which is a shame. Very noticeable on the Blu-rays. And Sandra got kicked in the head because, it's Sandra and basically, you can't let her have a happy life. Kick her in the head, why not? Oh, Alan's down.
You would come between me and my destiny.
But our great leader...
No one shall stop me.
Now got the strength to throttle Helena. He's really... Oh.
No.
I love this. It's so... I don't know, but I think the fact that you don't really see Prentice Hancock really stretching his acting chops as such throughout the rest of the series because he doesn't have the material, being given something like this and just running with it, it makes it more effective than it would have been had, say, Koenig gone off like this. And meanwhile, the aerial probes are back.
Look, Dr. Russell. The people of the planet Ariel are here again. It is a second coming.
I shall throttle them, and then I shall build cities, and then we shall have bread, and oh, here comes Koenig and Matthias. Unnoticed by Paul, but Helena has certainly noticed. And she's got a plan.
Atmospheric pressure is falling rapidly, Commander.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. Those satellites are back.
So she's run back into the Eagle, and she's found several canisters of presumably oxygen or similar gas that just happened to be lying around the cabin. Very lucky those didn't go off during the crash. Releasing the valves on all of them, and then grabbing the laser bazooka rifle thingy, which might have been a way of attracting the search party's attention also, but probably best they didn't employ that. Retreating to a safe distance from the Eagle, and again, lovely integration of the exploding model
15 degrees left.
On the model set, and then Barbara Bain's stunt double being thrown backwards on a live action set. Yay, that's got Koenigs and Matthias' attention.
Spacesuits, Commander. The atmosphere is thinning fast. No time.
Alan's found Helena.
Take her! Commander, I'm all right. It's Sandra. She needs help. She's in a shack over there.
I won't mention that Paul's completely gone off his rocker. I'm sure you'll get the gist of it when you run into him. Poor Sandra.
Leave her alone! There's no time, Paul. I said leave her alone!
Oh, this is more
We have laid the foundation stone of mankind's future.
trauma for Sandra to endure. And having delivered that line, Princess Hancock is immediately replaced by a stunt double. I mean, okay, I do feel a lot of sympathy for Sandra, but in moments like this, I know she had a concussion as well, but she's just rolling around on the floor whimpering. She could easily just get up and walk away. There we go, we have to have Koenig and Paul fighting while she scrambles around on the side. And of course we've now had the last of Paul's religious rhetoric, I think. Now we're just fighting with a grappling hook. Paul's almost out of it. Meanwhile, two stunt doubles are fighting on an identical set somewhere else. Yeah, I don't normally like to complain about the stunt doubles because, you know, it's the period in which it was made, but they are very noticeable here. As it Paul's punched and down, and there he goes. Oh dear. Koenig's thinking, my God, why didn't Alan warn me about that?
Is a food substance amazingly rich in second-class protein and many of the essential vitamins. We could grow almost limitless crops once we've removed all the hallucinating elements.
Oh.
I'm sorry I didn't discover that sooner, Paul.
Oh, I'm not. It wasn't a bad trip. Except for the ending.
It's at times like that you find out who your friends are, Paul.
Commander!
Always forgiven.
There's movement on the alien object.
Oh, Tanya did get some more lines. I also like that they've come out of all this with a new crop of food to eat. That's nice. So these aliens have given them something beyond a few days frolicking in the sun.
It's leaving us.
The sooner the better.
And it sets up position over the main mission tower.
We were neither benevolent nor malevolent, Commander Koenig.
Wow.
Our absolute need was to prevent you from penetrating the atmosphere of our planet. So we gave you what you wanted, in the hope that you would not further disturb us.
Can you hear me?
And understand your thoughts.
Uh-oh.
Then you must have known we came in peace.
We believe your intentions.
But here it comes.
But we have been watching the progress of your world since the beginning of time.
Oh, of course you have.
Human nature is such that we could not afford to take the risk.
And that's straight out of the Star Trek Alien playbook, where they get lectured by an alien in a glowing nightie saying, we've been watching you for many, many centuries. I do like, though, that there was no real sort of lecture, no you are good or bad, because these aliens just decided they were neither good or bad. Meanwhile, we now get this, from a very heartwarming and inspiring shot earlier, we now get a very sad and poignant shot as the atmosphere is cleared, the sun is retreating on the horizon, and all our regulars and all those extras who've been getting so much screen time this week all gather at the windows to watch the sun set on what could have been their new world. And I love as well that everyone plods off back to work. That is everyone except Paul and Sandra, because can't help feeling they had a bit more invested in that new world than anyone else, and everyone was very invested in that. But hey ho, that's another dream down the toilet, and that was The Last Sunset. And as I said at the start, that's always been my favourite episode of the show, precisely because it focuses so much on the other characters. Okay, Helena was on the search party as well, but it was so nice to get particular focus on Sandra and Paul and Alan and Tanya and the extras back in main mission. It's a lovely change of pace, a lovely idea to present the Alphans with something they really want right on their own doorstep and then take it away from them.
Well.
How appropriate.
Yes, we're all about Space 1999, aren't we, this week?
Yes, me with me uniform T-shirts, you with your sicky eagle in a bucket. It's just all about Space 1999. So thanks, Chris. I hope you all enjoyed that, Podstrons. Will you be going off and watching some Space 1999 inspired by The Last Sunset?
I think I'm going to go and watch it straight after this podcast, yeah.
Really? So you're going to watch UFO Identified and Space 1999 The Last Sunset in the same day?
Yeah,
Are you
why
feeling
not?
all right?
Yeah, who wouldn't want to do that?
Oh, all right. Well,
yeah.
I think there are certainly a few people around, but yes, that sounds like a great thing to do. If you're going to do that too, Podstrons, do let us know. podcast@gerryanderson.co.uk or tweet us. I'm Jamie Anderson, or him, Richard and James, or him with mercifully not very sticky fingers, Chris Dalek. And just add the hashtag Gerry Anderson podcast, and we'll probably see it, and Richard might even read it out next week.
Yeah, I might do if I could be bothered. We'll see. Don't count on it.
Fair enough. All right. You've got a very busy life there, so it's understandable that you might not be able to keep up with the influx of messages. Right, okay, that's it. Pod 160 is over. We're done.
Yeah, come on.
We're done. I was going to go and have some honey on toast, but unfortunately Chris has scoffed the lot. Thanks, Chris. And mine next week, possibly. Right, Podstron, have a great week, and we'll be in your ear next week, or ears, possibly. Up to you.
Yeah, both, I would think.
Okay.
See you then.
Until then, bye.
Bye.
Stage 1 complete.
Let's go.
Spectrum is green.
Richard James, I've got a very important question for you.
Oh, come on then.
When you're recording the podcast with me,
yeah,
and you've got your cans on,
yeah,
do you have them over one or both ears?
Oh, both ears. I'm a both ears kind of guy.
I'm a one ear.
Are you? How does that work? I see the professionals doing voiceover work in their booths, and they did the whole one ear thing. Well, I don't understand. What would that achieve?
Yeah, I'm not really sure why I only have one ear. I mean, it's partly because the covered ear gets a bit clammy, and I don't want double clammy ears.
Right.
So that might be it. But I just feel a bit more comfortable about the sound.
Oh, no, I can't have the sound coming in one ear. Podstrons, if you're still listening to this, are you listening through one ear or two? That's the question, isn't it?
Oh, thank goodness we just did this as a mono mix, though, and I haven't just got you in one ear and on the other side.
Yes, that's right.
Oh, dear. Anyway, well, I'm glad we've established that you're a two-ear man and I'm a one-ear man.
Certainly a very important question. I'm surprised it's lasted 160 pods before you had the nerve to ask, to be honest.
But that's the reason people keep listening, because I'm here to ask the difficult questions where people definitely want to know the answers, and now they know that answer.
Sorry, are people continuing to listen?
Probably not. If you've listened this far, do let us know. Tweet us hashtag clammy ears, and we'll know that you made it to the end of the podcast.
Yes, good idea.
Right,
so I'm going to go and rinse my ears out now.
Yeah, okay. So goodbye, double clammy ears. This is single clammy ear signing off.
Yeah.
Bye.
Oh, bye.
You have been listening to the Gerry Anderson podcast. Wasn't it fun?
You have been listening to an Anderson Entertainment production.